Mankind's history is much older than recorded time. There are those who have kept this knowledge from us. They have been preparing for an extinction event. Underground bunkers, off-world colonies, and all the golden tickets have already been given. Or have they? We will survive. We will prevail. We will ascend. David Wilcock, Corey Goode, Jordan Sather, Michael Sala, Laura Eisenhower, John D'Souza, Michael Crema, Robert David Steele, Allison Coe, Clifford Mahou, David Sanapass, Robert Salas, Mira Isley, Chasty, Robert Counts, Dr. Osmanov, James Gillian, William Kennedy, John Vivanco, Barry Littleton, Brendan Murray, Sasha Stone, Peter Maxwell Slattery. Reclaim your future. The Cosmic Secret. Available everywhere. November 19th.
Hey everybody!
Watching Dimensions of Disclosure 2019. And now,
Is
your
everybody
MCs,
having
Ben
fun?
Chasteen and Rob
Yes.
Counts.
I don't know, Ben. I think they put these chairs out for us.
Yeah,
What do you
I think
think?
so too. I mean, yeah. You know what I think?
What do you think, Ben?
I think forget Corey and David. Let's just talk for 3 hours.
Ben and Rob show. Yeah, I didn't want to really come out
yeah,
here
who wants
anyway.
to see Corey and David? Right? Really?
Yeah, you guys didn't come here for them, did you? Hey, so we have like 15 minutes together. So how did you want to spend this time? Did we want to kind of review some of the coolest things that have happened yet at Dimensions of Disclosure 2019?
Woo!
Okay, so Ben, what was your favorite moment so far? Aside from me getting cocktail sauce on my shirt from hugging someone back there.
You know, you guys who missed out on Sasha Stone and Robert David Steele, that was hilarious, you guys. That was so funny. It was great.
Yeah, those two are like, they're just a perfect combo on stage.
Oh my gosh, completely. And then,
Almost as good of a combo as David Wilcock and Corey Goode.
I thought you were going to say us. Just joking.
No, man. Be humble, Ben.
I'm just joking. Just joking. No, really. We're super excited. I mean, you know, honestly, I'm just, you know, I was talking to David actually earlier, the mixer thing, you know, and I'm just thinking to myself, like, this is crazy. Like, just last year where we're just like, you know, going.
Think we'll ever get an interview with David Wilcock?
Yeah, and then here we are introducing them on stage, you know? It's just such a, it's just like so surreal, like what's going on, you know? And honestly, we have so much to thank for you guys. You know, I mean, I can't believe it, really.
Yes.
I mean, really, we're just like, we're the way we are. I mean, oh, man.
So, hey, a lot of you probably didn't see this, but back at the mixer, Corey Goode went live on Sphere Being Alliance. Did everyone see that? No, because you were busy at Dimensions of Disclosure, probably. But actually, one of the questions I asked him was if he was going to be dropping any new information here, Dimensions of Disclosure, and he had that like Corey Goode gleam in his eye when he looked at me. And he said, well, he's like, I've gotten approval to share some new stuff about me visiting the moon space station.
Ooh.
And I kind of leaned over and I was like, tell me more, Corey. And he was like, no, man, wait.
We'll all find out what he's talking about, right?
We will.
So
yeah, it has been few and far between when Corey and David have been together, kind of like the old days in Cosmic Disclosure, right? I mean,
right, yeah.
So this is super exciting.
This is really cool. Yeah, this is really cool.
And Ben and I, so before we even started Edge of Wonder, I mean, just like everybody else, we were all glued to the TV every time Cosmic Disclosure would air every Friday, kind of waiting for David and Corey to come on and drop some crazy new info and then send it to all of our friends and them tell us we're crazy.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly what happened, right? And we're like trying to explain to everyone, like, oh no, this dude's like been to the like Mars and the moon and everything, and we're like, what are you talking about?
Right? Say what?
But yeah, I mean, and that was kind of, I mean, that, but we were seriously already talking about doing a show like this since like 2014, but it just didn't really come around, and then it was just kind of weird. It was just like, literally, it was almost like. Just this really was like a universe aspect of everything just coming together. I mean, in Taoist religions, they talk about cosmic timing, and I just felt like things shifted.
It was on.
It really was. It was like things just naturally came together for us. Something just opened up, and I really felt that there was this divine power behind us pushing this forward. I mean, you know, really, honestly, it really was.
You know, yeah, it's been really weird. Since we started the show, and we've done so many episodes, some of those including Corey and David, and one of the strangest things that Ben and I have encountered is when we'll kind of like start researching something and then talk about having a show, and then simultaneously with the show, the same stuff is breaking on mainstream news or something super related to some of the stuff that we're researching. And, you know, a lot of people start contacting us and they're like, are you Q? You have to be Q. This is weird.
Like, how did you guys know how to do this? Like, you guys must have so much information. And this side, we're like, no, we're just telling you, hey, what should we do this week, Ben? I don't know. Let's talk about this. Okay. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is in the news.
Yeah. And I really wish we were that cool. But alas.
Well, maybe somebody up there thinks we're cool enough, I guess, helping us out.
Because let's be honest, we're not doing anyone any favors on the human surface. But yeah, you know, it's been a wild ride. We had a pretty, I think, like not like advanced knowledge of this stuff before we started Edge of Wonder. But then when you really start, when it's your full-time job to start digging into these things, and you have a mission to make this content mainstream so that everyone across the world has an opportunity to understand what disclosure is and what the truth is, it becomes much different when you start trying to make content for it.
Right. Well, and that was the whole thing. Is like, wow, you know, we were watching all these YouTube videos, seeing all these different things. And it's like, man, some of these are great information, but they're really long. How can we take this same information, condense it down, you know, even shorter? And that's where our research skills and like the journalism background that I've learned through working at the paper really helped out a lot, you know. And that's one of the things that we're really skilled at, I think, is just being able to research pretty much anything.
Well, yeah, and we make mistakes.
Of course we make mistakes.
That's the whole thing. Is one of the things we'd really like to correct in journalism is being too afraid to talk about something and make a mistake. Like, we should be able to encounter new information and be like, okay, I was a little off. Let's apologize for that. Let's move on and let's get the truth out there. It doesn't matter if you're wrong initially or if you made a mistake. We need to pick ourselves back up and find the truth and keep searching for that truth. And it's something I think they're really missing out there.
But that's what the mainstream media doesn't do. They're like, we'll just put the fake news out, and yeah, that was wrong, but who cares? Oh, we'll just keep going with it. Yeah, Russia collusion, we'll just keep going, and then it's just, who's really the conspiracy theorist here, right? I mean, look what's happening in the news. All of us have been talking about Epstein for what, like over a year? And now it's like all blown out, and it's just like, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, we got to still talk about Russia and the Russia collusion, and it's like, yeah, okay, right.
Not to kind of change subjects so quick, but I kind of want to do something really embarrassing for a minute. So,
oh no,
I want our Edge of Wonder team right here to stand up and show everyone who they are. Right here, stand up, everybody!
Awesome
Come on,
team.
stand up. This isn't.
So
Eric, this guy right here is our video editor, and he's awesome.
Yeah, and he's been our producer for this weekend,
and he deserves some recognition.
Yeah.
Kathy is also our editor. Luba is our designer, and Ellen is awesome.
Yeah, no, Eric has been with us since day one. Yeah, there's a funny story about Eric, actually. You know, he actually comes from a background where he was interviewing
he
K-pop
was not working
stars.
with Rob and Ben?
Yeah, not working with K-pop. And he didn't know this content at all. And we got together because Eric he is the best video editor, and he's really good at what he does, and he knows how to like direct things pretty well. And it was so funny because the very first time we interviewed Laura Eisenhower, he was freaking out. He's like, I have no idea what she's saying. And he's like, how do I edit this? What do I do?
Did somebody translate this for me? What's a dodecahedron?
It's like she's speaking in a foreign language.
It was classic. Like, we were cracking up so hard, and we were like, man, we had a couple interviews with her already, so we've already been through this.
Yes. Well, that was the first one that we did, right?
Right.
And I was like, Eric, look, things are going to get easier for you. You're going to start understanding the lingo and the language and everything, and so we were just like, I was like, just put the whole video out. You don't need to edit it. Put the whole 45-hour video, whatever it is, it's cool. And he's like, no one's going to watch this, right?
Let Laura freestyle, because that's what she does.
Trust me. People are going to watch this. And he was like so shocked that like people were watching the whole video, But then, like the last time we interviewed Laura, he's like, "Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, she was talking about the dodecahedron. That's this, and I saw this, and I could add this image here." And even Rob's like, "What the heck is a dodecahedron?" Even Eric knows what it is.
That's true.
So
it's embarrassing.
He's came a long way. He now just understands everybody. He knows who everybody is. And our team was the one that made the slides for us and everything else of all the presenters, all the speakers. But most of all, actually going on a side note as well, Adrian. We have to thank Adrian for putting on this conference.
Wave. Yeah, actually, really, if it wasn't for Adrian, this never would have happened. Yeah. Come on.
Adrian
you
and
guys
all the
have
staff,
no idea how much he's endured.
I just need to say thank you. I just want to take this opportunity to thank everyone for being here, because obviously you made this happen. We had a lot of amazing people help us in this endeavor. We have a fantastic crew this year. I really have to point to our great live streamer crew out here. We have the Spiral Dragon. This team is phenomenal, and I think our live streamers right now are going, yes, 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 yes. We have over 2,000 people around the world watching us. And it just keeps growing. And the playback that you all are going to get to see that, you're going to be pretty shocked, because it's an amazing production, and they are awesome. See? They like to get every angle.
Yeah, that scared me a little, to be honest.
We had amazing volunteers this year that were with us last year. They were with us the year before, and they always show up. So, we have the core team of people that put this together over the last 5 months. A lot of people have asked me, wow, where's the divine feminine in this production? There's so many men in this production. Laura and Elizabeth held it down, and Sandra.
Divine feminine.
No. I don't even like that word. But
I don't either, for the record.
The heart of this crew is myself, Carly Youngblood, my daughter, Ashley Walsh, our truck coordinator, Audrey, the vendor coordinator, Kaylin, our media aficionado, and let me see, that was it. And that's all women, and that's who put this together. We create the container of creativity, and who shows up is who shows up, and everybody showed up. So I just really needed to say that. I'm sure I forgot someone, except I cannot forget Matt. Matthew is the most amazing person he's basically ran this whole show, and I really didn't have to do anything except run around. So I really just big hands up for Matt. Couldn't have done it without you. Thanks. All right, now I'm going to get off the stage. I just wanted to thank everyone and carry on because, you know, I think David and Corey might be coming up here soon. I'm not sure.
Well, maybe. If we think about bringing them up, we have to think about that.
Yeah, I don't know what they're going to do. I got a seat.
I got him. Well, I guess they got him, so that means I guess we're getting kicked off the stage.
Yeah, why don't we, do we really need to introduce these guys? Do we have to read some? I don't think so.
Yeah, okay. Well, without
everybody
further
ready?
ado, we have Mr. David Wilcock and Corey Goode.
No problem.
It's awesome. So you guys... So, actually, Rob, real quick, hold on.
Okay, that's all the time we have for tonight. Thank you.
So, real quick, David, while we're all on stage, let's talk about what the heck happened with Rachel Meadows.
Look, I'm really glad I only had to kill one person to get into Falun Gong, buddy. Thank you guys for letting me blood my way in. Corey taught me how to do it.
It's awesome. So you guys, I guess now that you're pretty much, you are Edge of Wonder, according
actually,
to Rachel
Rob, real
Maddows
quick,
now.
hold on.
I mean,
Okay, that's all the time we have for tonight. Thank you.
Thanks for all your hard work, David.
I really appreciate getting
real
my
quick,
ass
David,
handed to me
while
by
we're
a
all on
multi-millionaire
stage,
lesbian. That
let's
was
talk
awesome.
about what the heck happened with Rachel Meadows.
Felt very empowering to me. Look, I'm really glad I only had to kill one person to get into Falun Gong, buddy.
I can't follow
Thank you guys for letting me blood my way in. Corey taught me how to do it.
It's
It was
awesome. So you guys, I guess now that you're pretty much, you are Edge of Wonder, according
actually,
to Rachel
Rob, real
Maddows
quick,
now.
hold on.
I mean,
Okay, that's all the time we have for tonight. Thank
Thanks for all your
you.
hard work, David.
I really appreciate getting
real
my
quick,
ass
David,
handed to me
while
by
we're
a
all on
multi-millionaire
stage,
lesbian.
let's
That was
talk
awesome.
about what the heck happened with Rachel Meadows.
Felt very empowering to me. Look, I'm really glad I only had to kill one person to get into Falun Gong, buddy.
I can't follow
Thank you guys for letting me blood my way in. Corey taught me how to do it.
It's
It was
awesome. So you guys, I guess now that you're pretty much, you are Edge of
So,
Wonder, according
actually,
to Rachel
Rob, real
Maddows
quick,
now.
hold on.
I mean,
Okay, that's all the time we have for tonight. Thank
Thanks for all
you.
your hard work, David.
I really appreciate getting
real
my
quick, David, while we're all on stage, let's talk about what the heck happened with Rachel Meadows.
Look, I'm really glad I only had to kill one person to get into Falun Gong, buddy. Thank you guys for letting me. And honest to God, I feel like some of the videos that you and I have done, you as in the collective you, really are timeless and will be of great significance as the awakening unfolds. And so we have to be able to laugh at the haters. We can't take this stuff too seriously. It's just ludicrous when you have somebody out there where journalism is supposed to be free and balanced and unbiased, and they're literally telling us that we don't have the right to make a meager living on what we're doing, while at the same time working for a Luciferian company. We've never heard that before, right? That's never happened before. Nobody ever works for a Luciferian company. We'll just leave that one. That really kind of just sat there, so we're just going to leave it there to outgas. Okay? We're just going to leave that there. Anyway, I love you guys. It's good to see you in person. You're both taller than I expected. You know, people always tell me the same thing, right?
Yeah, Rob said that earlier about you.
It does boost my self-esteem that I am slightly taller than you guys. Okay?
It's slight, David. Let's be honest.
Between you and Corey,
I mean, you're all dressed
You know
up.
what? It's just Corey's hair that makes him this tall.
That's true.
Come
That's
on.
true. Well, he's 105 or 6 years old, man.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, it's like next thing is going to be like 40 and back, and then 60 and back.
in the third phase of his growth cycle, he gets like 12 feet tall. So he's just getting started, you know? But no, I really do love you guys. It is a bromance, you know, but it's a very non-sexual bromance. I'll just leave that there.
Let's emphasize that last part,
You know?
David, especially after that lesbian comment.
You guys are not, contrary to rumors spread by certain individuals on the internet, you guys are not the Bert and Ernie of disclosure.
No, we're the Bill and Ted of Exclosure.
Wow, someone actually said that? I haven't heard that. It's all new. What did you say, Bill and Ted's?
I said we're the Bill and Ted of
That's
Disclosure.
more like it.
Wow, you know, Corey got mad at David Wilcock because he stole Stephen Greer's boyfriend. I mean, come on.
What
really?
the heck?
Why do they always have to say we're gay? I'm freaking married to like the hottest woman on earth, for God's sake.
Elizabeth Wilcock, everyone.
And I love it. I got a tan. I'm tanned, rested, and ready for this. I was out there pulling weeds, thistles on my land in Colorado. It was wonderful.
We know that's just cream, David. It's not.
And I am
Not
ready
real
to
tea.
drop some bomb-ass knowledge on y'all.
Yes!
Are you ready for that? This is...
Seriously, though, how did you guys expect to go to a conference like this, a conspiracy conference where it gets very serious, and have so much fun while doing it? Like, isn't this awesome?
We're not going to make any jokes about the microphone or how phallic it looks or the fact that we're passing it back and forth. We're both getting our mouths really close
He's
to it.
just going to keep going with this. It just keeps going. I keep expecting him
Every time.
to... No.
I'm not going to talk about how this looks like.
No, here, like, you want that one?
We got to share
That
and
one's
share
yours
alike.
anyway.
You know, this is all a bromance, so... Seriously, though, I mean, these guys have laid their lives on the line for us, for disclosure. Give them a big round of applause, everybody.
Hey,
Seriously,
thank you,
guys,
everybody.
Honestly, really, I mean, we're all in this together. We're so moved by what's happened. It's very emotional, the stories that you guys are sharing with us. Actually, so many people have told me that they found us through you.
Wow.
So
Thank you very much, you guys,
and
both of you.
And maybe now through Rachel Maddow.
Not through Mason Matters.
No, Rachel Mad Cow doesn't do much for anyone, but Corey and David have really, really helped.
Yes, yeah, but no,
Right
seriously, on your own, the YouTube stuff that you were doing, and you were saying, you know, we got someone called us, and you were like, dude, you guys, David Wilcock just was talking about you on his YouTube channel, and we're like, what? You
Yeah,
know?
no, actually the message I got was, dude, everyone in the Alliance watches you guys. David Wilcock just said it. And I was like, yeah.
You were like, what? Seriously? So, no.
I mean, look how brave they are that they're both wearing wool tweed suit jackets in this room with this many people.
You want under there, David?
Oh, I've seen it all. I've seen it all.
I mean, we can, you know, it's all right. We can arrange that.
You know, when I got into Falun Gong, and there was that whole component of it. So, I mean...
I'm wondering how many sweat rings you'll have under your...
Actually, I'm doing pretty good right now.
Really?
I'm all right.
You're all right? Well, you just changed for the mixer thing, so
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, you know, they asked me to dress it up. Anyway, we're going to get off stage so these guys can do
get
their
the hell
thing.
off my stage, man.
Thank you guys so much
Yeah,
for
thank
everything
you,
that
buddy.
you do.
We love you guys so much. It's so awesome. Corey, I don't want to hurt your back here.
Y'all just have to endure this part, okay?
All right.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
I need my wire, you know? It's very important. Corey, you're sitting on that one, I guess. There's a whole blocking to this. How you guys feeling? You having fun? You enjoying being here? Does anybody think we're crazy? If so, don't raise your hand, because it could get dangerous. You know how these cult members are. Blue chicken cult, man. It's a suicide cult. But in the back, we got Kool-Aid now. Well, we don't have Kool-Aid anymore, though. We have green tea. Because people were complaining about the Kool-Aid. You know, they just said, well, I want something healthier. Anyway, I'm not going to do a whole lot of that kind of stuff. I will say, however, that Corey Goode is a cannabinoid, and there are rumors that there is a Corey Goode receptor site in the human brain. He is a cannabis-powered warrior for truth, my friends.
There's a little bit of truth to that.
So it's quite fascinating to see how this whole story has evolved. Corey was first writing me, I believe, back in like 2008 or something like that.
2008, 9.
It was a long time ago. And he shared with me some very interesting information that we still are not cleared to talk about, right? Or can we?
About the blimp?
The blimp. Oh, we can talk about that. Wow, okay. So at the time, Corey was just another insider or prospective insider who wrote me. And I really want to point this out, too, because he did not push. He shared with me a very interesting story about being in, can we say what it was, or should we not say what? Oh, we can.
Yeah, Texas State
Okay,
Guard.
wow. This used to be secret. I couldn't talk about this. So he was working at the time in the Texas State Guard, which is the National Guard out of Texas.
It's a Texas Military Forces. It's a little bit different than the National.
And here's this guy, this random individual who writes me a letter. And the gist of it was that there was, well, why don't you tell us what the gist of it is? Since you can talk about it, then it's better than me.
So I was in the, we were setting up antenna aerials for communications, and we were working with the National Guard, and we had the Air Force and the Army National Guard out, and they were working out on setting up and training for Operation Border Star down in southern Texas.
Just put the mic on your chin, that'll help.
So while we were setting up the aerial, all of a sudden we started hearing people screaming and pointing off to the side, and we look off and we see this, looks like a triangular giant blimp that has a big crease in it, like it had lost air and it had lost buoyancy. It was at an angle, and there were long tethers hanging from the corners of it. And it apparently had blown away or become loose somehow from the people that were holding it, tethering it down.
But this was one of these, whoa, I got really hot now. My mic is really hot. Sound guy? You got the wrong mic. You're trying to turn Corey up, you turn me up. Okay. Look at those little lights, and they go up and down. You'll see which one it is. Anyway, what Corey was doing was he was seeing one of these flying black triangles, like the infamous TR-3B. Now, what was so interesting about this was that I already had heard through other insiders, like with the Phoenix Lights, one of the weirdest witness reports of the Phoenix Lights, you may remember this, Corey, was people are seeing this black triangle thing flying overhead. It appears to have all these rivets and machinery on the bottom, but some of the witnesses noticed that it was rippling, like it was made out of a fabric or something. So then you come in with this email, and we start to get more information on that.
Right. I was standing with the other guys from the Texas State Guard, and all of a sudden we started hearing people yelling, "Eyes on your boots, eyes on your boots." And of course, being from the Texas State Guard, instead of the National Guard, we looked up instead of looking at our boots. And as soon as I looked up, a 2-quart canteen flew by my head. Someone threw a canteen at me because I was not looking down. So we all turned around and looked down. But as I was looking up, it was obviously partially deflated, and it was huge. And on top, it had an area to where it looked like they were a landing pad for drones or something.
I want to get a pillow so I'm not slouching in the seat. Yeah, the seat is like super duper slouchy, so you actually have the defense advantage of the pillow.
I've noticed.
So we'll get some more pillows out here. In the meantime, I'll sit up straight because I don't want to just be doing this and man-spreading at my own event, right? Like, oh, hey, everybody. So this was how it all started. I had this...
That's the first information I shared, right?
I had this dude write me as an insider, and it's... You know, I believed him because the real stories are so freaking quirky. And this story had that element. Plus, it appeared that whatever this craft was, it was malfunctioning because, as you said, it's like leaning on this crazy angle. And you said it was super massive in size, right?
Huge.
Just
Hundreds and hundreds of feet across.
Wow.
Probably 600 feet.
So But here's the thing. I mean, I'm a very busy guy, and so even though I believed him, we just kind of occasionally exchanged emails. And so one of the ways that people have built trust with me, I mean, like, for example, I knew Elizabeth for 3 years before we got together, and she really didn't try to get in. You know, she could have tried, but she didn't. And when you've been public for as long as I have, you notice when people push, and you notice when people kind of hold back. So I knew about this Corey Goode character. You know, he had showed up from time to time. He'd send me interesting things, but I didn't really know what the deeper story was. And then in 2014, you came forward to Project Camelot, Benjamin Fulford, and me, and you wrote this strange email where you were talking about the SSP, and I didn't know what that was. But one of the things I've learned, and if you ever get the chance to meet insiders, you'll figure this out real quick. Just play along like you know what they're talking about, okay? Just kind of, oh yeah, right, the SSP, sure. So I did that. I mean, I basically said, but when I first saw this, before I even engaged, I said, you know, let me just see how the others handle this, right? Let's see how Fulford handles this. Let's see how Camelot handles this, because this is some pretty wacky stuff this guy's saying to me. I'll be honest with you. You're talking about time travel, and you're talking about there was a lot of jargon in there that I wasn't really familiar with. So I did kind of hang back, and I gave it some time. And then I remember it was about maybe 2 weeks after you'd first sent me this thing, where I said, why don't I just go and read this guy's stuff on this forum that he was participating on? And I start to read these things, and I look at the complexity of the information that this guy is putting out. And I said, wait a minute. This is way beyond a LARP or live action role play. This guy's no LARPer, because this stuff is so detailed. It's the detail, but then also, even at the beginning, I looked at the ways in which what he was saying crossed over with my own material, and that I'd gathered from other insiders who'd already proven that they were the real deal. So that's actually what happened, is you and I started to speak on the phone, and I was typing nonstop. I would take notes the whole time you were talking, and very, very quickly, within the first 2 or 3 calls, I found at least 40 or 50 very specific things that I had only heard from other insiders that I had never put online. And you knew the code names of these programs, you knew all these details, and then, as you've described before, you wanted to come. Tell us again, what was the reason why you decided to come forward? What were my insiders doing that inspired you to action, or not doing, let's say?
Well, I had heard a number of your insiders walk right up to the line and then stop.
Right.
Just about to spill the mother load. They would just walk right up to the edge and then stop.
Yeah.
What was the point of that?
Well, it was interesting because there clearly was something very big going on. And the greatest disadvantage that we all have had, really as a community, in my view, is that some of the most primo insiders only trusted me. They wouldn't talk to other people. Now, that's not really my fault. In fact, it's kind of an honorable thing, I guess. But the effect of it is, as we've now seen more than ever in the UFO quote-unquote community, if you want to call it that, I don't even know if that word applies, that if everybody wants the scoop, everybody wants the unique angle that they own and control. Whereas what I've always done is I've tried to synthesize this stuff. And another thing that I think made Corey real is that you actually trolled me in the past on some of these forums, you know? And because, you know, it's fun to hate David Wilcock. I mean, who doesn't, right? That's what you do online. You go on there and you hate David Wilcock. I mean, I make it really easy for you. Look at the stuff that comes out of my mouth, for God's sake.
I think I'm the low-hanging fruit now, literally.
Well, there's a
Talk
lot
about
of
this
places
stuff.
we could go
You talk
with
about
this,
8-foot tall blue chickens. You got to be used to okay with being called a fruit.
That's true. That's true. I mean, anyway, let's keep this PG-13, folks. I'm very happy that we've been able to bring this team together, that we've been able to bring you this show. Again, give yourselves a big round of applause for coming out here. So awesome. Thank you. So when I started to talk to Corey, what unfolded was a very interesting cosmic narrative. And in the beginning, you had no intention of ever coming forward. Not whatsoever.
There was no way in hell I was coming forward.
I know.
And now you see why.
You have a family,
Right.
you have 2 kids.
I had a career
They're young
that was
children,
finally taking
yeah.
off.
And it was really fascinating because the first time you came over to LA to visit, we went and saw this crazy movie from the Wachowski, I guess, sisters, right?
Brothers.
Wachowski sisters now. And now they're sisters, right? First it was the Wachowski brothers, then it was the Wachowskis. Now they don't really call them the Wachowski sisters, though. They just call them the Wachowskis. But anyway, it was Jupiter Ascending was the movie, and I totally remember this one point in the movie when there was a guy piloting a craft who had like a little elephant nose. And you were sitting next to me in the movie theater, and his whole
This is
body...
where he overreacts.
No, this is true.
Okay.
His whole body, he went like that. He literally went... And this movie, by the way, has dinosaur humanoids in it with long tails. Now, it's not exactly the same as what you were talking about, but right away, that was one of the things where, okay, look, a normal person is not going to have that kind of a reaction when watching a movie. And even somebody who's quote-unquote trying to fake it, that's not the kind of response you can fake. And so then you remember after the movie, I asked you, what's up with Elephant Nose Guy? And what did you tell us?
I'll keep it clean.
There's so many places we could go with this, folks.
That it reminded me of a being that had been reported in the programs fairly closely.
And you had actually seen these, right?
Well, I'd seen images.
Right. So this was another example where we are getting the truth, if you will, but it's so deeply veiled under the guise of fiction, and part of what this does is it prevents the real information from being taken seriously. Oh, you guys are just interested in Star Trek or Star Wars, or oh, you saw Jupiter Ascending. They do this on purpose. But the other thing about that movie is it was very disturbing stuff, because they were sending in these invasion forces, actually ruled by these reptilians, to essentially destroy entire planets worth of people, simply to create this extract from them that they would then take a bath in that would keep them eternally young. So it had this whole weird, like, loosh thing, and like kind of like the blood drinking stuff, like all this very interesting, disturbing material. So we actually at some point decided that I was going to share your information anonymously, and we started calling you Luke.
Yep.
And that's true. I came up with a name, and I said, let's keep it biblical, let's keep it really solid, nice archetypal thing. So we came up with Luke. And then pretty quickly after I started to share your information, the wheels fell off the cart. Because you had this handle that was Goode ETXSG. And then people were like capitalizing the ET part in the middle. But then it turns out that it was actually his last name, Goode Texas State Guard. So this...
Well, that's not... No one figured it out.
Nobody figured it out.
It wasn't until someone from a particular researcher
That's
was
right.
upset. They wanted the scoop. They wanted me to come out and be on their show. And I said, no. If people find out that I claim to be in a secret space program, they won't let me near their $1 trillion data. My career will be over. but this person didn't care, and they put my name out anyway. And I immediately called David, freaking out.
I remember.
Freaking out. I'm going to get killed. My career's over. Everything's over.
I wiretapped all those calls, so we have the recording somewhere.
Oh yeah. All of those phone calls were recorded. So someday that'll be very interesting to play.
Oh, yeah.
But so a whole drama ensued, and I had come out soon after that. I think I came out and we shot a bunch of video at your house, which still never seen the light of day.
That's true.
Amazing.
Because you were
video.
constantly going,
I was like
choking and stuff. I mean, it was really bad.
Every time I looked at the camera, I felt like it was sucking my soul out. So I would like.
He's progressed to some degree. To some degree.
But so we recorded that, and I believe you brought that with you to show it to the people.
Yeah.
And
that's right.
Shortly after that, I was invited to come out and do a recording or two.
Well, but we're also jumping over a really big part here before we even get to that, which was that you had started to download to me all this stuff about the secret space program. And I remember, I knew a lot of what you already had said. But one of the things that really, really shocked me in the early days was, and I don't know if you remember me talking about this, you mean that there are people who really do have like dinosaur faces? Because I hadn't really heard about that. I had heard about, like with Henry Deacon, it was strange because he did describe a group that was wearing this kind of strange, ornate battle armor that was kind of like red and black and very intricate, like you'd see in a video game or something. But in his case, when they came into the room, they always wore masks. So you couldn't see what they looked like, but everybody was afraid of these people. And everybody, as in the other extraterrestrials that he claimed he was working with. So this is another important point, folks. I was talking to Henry Deacon back in like 2007. So by the time Corey Goode comes forward in 2014, I've had 7 years of talking to people about the amazingly extensive off-planet development that we have of bases and the craft that can go there and all the extraterrestrials that our governments are working with. There wasn't a lot of original stuff that Corey was saying up to a point. But then what happens is all these missing pieces start to come in. And I was incredibly fascinated. So we were talking almost every day at that point, and I'd keep you on the phone for like 2 hours. You were getting tired because I kept asking you questions. You're like, man, I gotta go. And I'm just like...
And you're typing going, holy shit.
Yeah.
I can't wait. We have to play those
over
back.
and over. Yeah. And we do have, I did record everything. So all the authentic process of how this unfolded has been documented. And it wasn't until you had we really started to get into this in November of 2014. So pretty much all of November, all of December, all of January, and most of February. So basically 4 months where I'm interrogating him essentially every day. And I was it was so unbelievable because
trying to trick me all these different.
Well, that's
games.
true.
Yeah.
That's true. No, you have to do that for the greater good. Well, because I knew that eventually this might become a big deal, and I don't want to be taken advantage of. I don't want to be made to be gullible. I'm not a gullible guy. You have to understand something. This stuff is really serious. I was told by other insiders that if any of these topics went online, that I would have the knock on the door, quote unquote, the next morning. And I was told by, for example, Pete Peterson, who I met starting in 2009, who actually, this is super, super sad, folks, but right before he died, okay, he told me that he had been to 65 off-planet locations and that he had never been authorized to talk about it before. But that now he said, at the time that this call happened, he said that if the current president remains president for 6 more months, now you can take that however you want, you hate him, you love him, I don't care, okay? If the current president stays president for 6 more months, he would be able to talk about anything that he wanted. Can I get a big round of applause for that? Because that's pretty amazing. Okay? How many people saw the second to most recent Godzilla movie? Not King of the Monsters that just came out, but the one before that. Raise your hand if you saw Godzilla. You remember
Look at all those hands.
So there's nobody wants to admit it. Like, there's this Asian guy. So Godzilla has to face off against some other monster, right? And the military people are like, well, should we just blow the hell out of both of them? And there's this Asian guy, very intense, and he goes, "Let them fight." And that's kind of how I look at Trump and the media right now, you know? I'm like, let them fight. Just let them, this is fun. Let's watch the fun, right? We got QAnon that's out there openly giving us 500. Yeah. There you go. There you go. 500 different proofs that this is coming out of the U.S. administration. That's a fact. So again, even if you don't like him, it's really, really interesting when you go in there and you see how often they are going out of their way to prove that this is coming from the administration, and they're openly talking about all the stuff that we've been talking about online ever since I got online in 1995, and Alex Jones, FEMA camps, Bilderberg, Illuminati, Council on Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission. Like, shit, man, this is mainstream now. It's amazing. I mean, Alex Jones isn't mainstream anymore. Do you know that if you literally put the name Alex Jones on your Facebook account, that they will delete your account? It's crazy. It's crazy. Same thing with Minister Louis Farrakhan, right? A hero in the black community. He is a Muslim, but and he's radical. But a lot of the stuff that he says is pretty right on the money. If you've been studying this stuff, you literally cannot talk about Farrakhan or you will lose your entire channel. So what the hell are they so afraid of? Why is Alex Jones such a threat that you can't talk about him? And now that they got the top guy, now they're working on the next level down, which is yours truly, an Edge of Wonder. Now they're actually pointing their guns at us on mainstream media. Rachel Maddow is saying that Falun Gong runs Edge of Wonder. It's so ridiculous. The whole thing is so ridiculous.
It's not true, everybody.
What do you have to say? Come on up here. What do you have to say about that? Let's get into this.
Yeah, really.
Come on. I mean, we really got to delve into this shit.
On the record.
So what is the bottom line on this story?
No, that's not true. What the heck? First of all, someone's spiritual beliefs are their own business. Can I get some support here? Okay. Second of all, Falun Gong or Falun Dafa, whatever you want to call it, does not accept any money from any of the people that practice. It's actually amazing. Like, they all just go out peacefully to practice sites and they meditate, and all they try to do is cultivate truth, compassion, and tolerance, right?
Yeah, well, and then, I mean, what happened was it just got way too big for the Communist Party. There was 100 million people practicing it in China before 99. It got too big, but something about NBC that we found out, they did $1 billion deal contract with the Chinese governments.
Really? Whoa.
Yes. So, I wonder why and what happened. And, you know, it's like, okay, so if they did this deal with NBC, then was NBC motivated to do this?
And you have to understand that the only reason that the media entity and the Epoch Times originally were created because there was absolutely no media in China that was not state-controlled. All of it were propaganda apparatuses. These two medias come about in the United States because nobody in China had the truth, and Chinese dissidents who were brave enough to create these media did it and took all kinds of heat to create those media, and then eventually started English media companies that turned into what they are today, and NBC coming after them just means they're big and awesome.
Well, I mean,
And they've done it. They've actually broken through, and they've told the truth, and they've reached millions of people.
Yeah, this is the thing. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, why is Rachel Maddow's attacking our YouTube channel? And then, it just doesn't make any sense at all, right? So that's what we start digging into is like, what's the reason behind this? So there's definitely some deals going on.
There have been.
So,
Lots of media companies now are being funded by the Chinese Communist
That's
Party.
right.
Why is that happening? It's because China's stealing all intellectual property everywhere. They're creating these machines in China, right? All of these corporate machines corporate patents that they have, and all of this stuff, the things that are being created, all of that is getting stolen by the Chinese government, and they're creating these things. The Communist Party wants to take over the entire world.
Yeah, and also, if you want to clap at that, sorry. And we've personally talked with CEOs as well who do not want to be mentioned, who have done deals in China. And so, like, for example, they'll make a product in China. China creates a factory. They're making this product. They secretly create another factory where they're making that same product on the side, and they're selling that into China, where the main CEO is paying for their company to be.
I've heard about this. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not selling that product in China. They're delivering it back overseas, or they'll get an order. Let's say for 5 million iPhones, they double that order to 10 million, and then those are the ones that are being sold on the black market.
And that's not just it. They put chips in all of your phones, and every time you send a message, iCloud, the servers are in China. Every single thing that we do, goes through China right now as we speak. They're listening to this. The whole thing is going on right now.
If your phone is connected with the internet, it is on. Just know it's a listening device. Even if it's on or off, it doesn't matter. They know exactly what you're saying all the time, where you are at all the time. And this is not,
how many people have died from the Chinese Communist Party throughout history? 200 million to 500 million people undocumented.
Well,
really.
Well, you're probably
You want to
right.
go by the Black Book of Communism, it's still 94 million people. If you're talking about how many Mao, the worst dictator in the world, did not report, we're talking about 200 million to 500 million
That's
people.
the problem, it's not reported. But we know also that the Chinese government is working directly with the deep state, which is how they're getting all so many children, the organ harvesting, all of this, right? And then if the mainstream media is a part of this, and they're scared what's happening now with the pedophilia coming down and Trump coming down on this, of course they're going to attack the one things, or all the things that are talking about this, which is how all of this is getting brought up.
So to make a long story short, are
So
we
what you're
going
saying
to
is
listen?
it's not true.
I'm sorry?
So what you're saying is it's not true.
So,
It's not true.
are we going to listen to NBC?
No!
Dude, you just broke the mic, man.
He literally dropped the mic.
It's
I love
fun.
it.
No, but and something you were saying too is like you were saying actually,
Ben,
David
get
Wilcock.
off the stage.
But no, just real quick, because you were saying you were going to challenge Rachel Maddow. You were like,
Absolutely.
Why don't you talk about
debate.
that? We'll get off the stage, leave it back to you guys. But thank you guys. Thank you for letting us explain that too.
First of all, I think we need some of Corey's magic avian blue cannabis and just send that shit right to Xi Jinping. But that's I don't know if you've announced that yet, so we probably shouldn't talk about that.
No, I don't know what you're talking about.
Avian blue has a nice ring to it, huh? Wonder what that's based on. So yeah, Rachel Maddow, I'll say this on stage as well. I am totally happy to be civil. I'm totally happy to not be aggressive, not use profanity, keep it all the way MSNBC needs it to be. But I challenge you, Rachel Maddow, to an extended debate on your show. I will go. I have no problems with the LGBT community. I'm not prejudiced. I'm not racist. But if you're going to go out there and make statements like this and try to act as if this is all laughable when you are confronting someone who is a 2-time New York Times bestseller, it's true. who's been in over 600 different episodes of television. And within the 3 published books that I have, there's over 2,000 academic references. If you want to get into this, I'm happy to get into it. Come give me a call, and I'll go right into your studio, and we'll do it live. We'll do it live! Yeah! That's for real, folks. I mean that. If she calls on me, I will show up. I guarantee you, I will fly, I will take a train, I will take a boat or a plane. I will do it at night, I will do it without a fight.
David, we'll be there with you.
And I love green eggs and ham, man. I mean, it's like... Anyway.
So light up the Twitterverse. The challenge has been laid.
I've laid down the gauntlet. Okay.
We're going to have you say that on our show, too, just to make sure she hears it.
We will say it on Edge of Wonder as well. Absolutely. I had to blood my way into your cult, but now I'm a good, upstanding member, and I feel really good about that. I'm glad you only had me kill one person, though. That part kind of sucked, but, you know. It's terrifying, he said. No, I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, come on. The reason why I worked with Edge of Wonder is that they had the best stuff on YouTube. That's all. That's all. And I loved it for the same, I love it now, present tense, for the same reason that I love doing Ancient Aliens, because you go in there, you do a great performance, and then later on, this amazing product comes out, and they do all the work on their own. So it's an amazing, amazing opportunity, because we have some really timeless stuff on there, stuff that I think many more people are going to watch. So if you think about what's going on, they never, the cabal, the deep state, the elite, they never want to call you out by name. Because as soon as they do, I mean, you guys said you had a surge in viewership after that, right?
Subscriptions. 500 extra subscriptions after.
500 subscriptions on your platform, yeah. So as soon as they do that, it's sort of like a sacrifice. It's a sacrifice of the anonymity that we had up until then on their platform. Now, you'll notice they never used my name. Rachel never said my name.
They didn't say our name.
They didn't say your name either. You could see, though, the Edge of Wonder, because they had screen captures from your YouTube videos. And then they took probably the weirdest thing I ever said on your show, and that's all they played.
How long did it take them to hunt for that?
I don't know, man. And then, of course, how did they get Alex Jones? Apparently, at one point, he may or may not have said something about whether kids really died at Sandy Hook. I know they did. I've never said anything other than that. Well, David Wilcock said, they didn't even use my name, but he said that nobody really died in the planes on 9/11 because they were landed at these military bases and the people went underground. There was a really big Russian study that said just that. And if you look at the original flight paths of the planes after 9/11, it does appear that they go over these military bases and they do stay over them long enough that they could have landed there. And you can actually map it out and see, okay, this particular plane was over this particular military base for so long. It does a landing flight pattern. Nobody really goes back and looks at that stuff. Why were the planes that hit the towers unmarked and gray? They didn't have the normal, whatever it was, the airline that it was supposed to be. That wasn't on there. They weren't even the right color. So then you find out from guys like Pete Peterson that people get pulled into underground bases all the time. And so if these people are presumed dead, but they can get, 100, 200, 500,000 workers out of it, they're happy to do that. In fact, Corey, that's one of the things you've talked about. Let's just dive deep on this for a while. So with your experience in the programs, people do get pulled in from our world sometimes into this. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, they'll, it depends on what level. They have shopping lists of desired skill sets.
Right.
And they will have, they will either pull them through legitimate purposes by tricking people into joining a long project. Right. And pull them underground. But a lot of times they will find people through through syndicates who have shopping lists of types of people that they're looking for the human trade. They're looking for, they have people out there looking for engineers and biochemists that they can steal, kidnap, and sell on the black market, just like any other commodity.
So I want to go back to our narrative because I think this is really important to understand that the way that Corey Goode comes out to the public was really quite spontaneous. We did not plan this thing out. We did not know where this was going at the time. I was getting briefings from you almost every day for 4 months. And then this is where, because I remember we were talking about, and I'd asked you, what was the most recent thing that had happened? And you told me it had something to do with you were trained as an intuitive empath. You could find, I guess, these free-floating portals psychically. So let's talk about that for a second.
Yes. They would find 3 intuitive empaths and use us to locate a target. And the target would be a portal. As I stated before, portals open below ground, underwater. They open here at the surface and way up in the upper atmosphere. And they wanted us to be able to predict where one of these were going to open so they could position their craft there. And when the moment came, they bathe that area with a certain type of energy that allows them to then open the portal. So they would grab intuitive empaths from time to time that they had used in the programs before to locate portals for them.
Right. So this was the most recent thing that he had done with the secret space program. And these were basically, like you're saying, they were off-ledger type of things. They were not approved trips. These were people trying to scam the system to get out of here. Could you talk a little about that?
Right. One of the more recent ones was, and I had, on my third 20 and back, I had gone through, I went through a neurological burnout with the chemicals that they were using on me. It overloaded my neurology, and I was no longer a useful asset for them, intuitive empath-wise. Somehow this information didn't make it to whatever group picked me up that night. I was picked up, and there were a couple other intuitive empaths picked up, and it was in an older TR-3B type that it was a very large triangular craft. Inside was circular, and there were 3 floors. And there were people standing on each floor looking down, talking to us, asking us to open a portal. And I informed the people that I was no longer able to do that task.
You were a burned asset.
I was a burned ass. So they dropped me off back home. But that was one of the... I thought you were going to mention... you asked if I was in contact with any type of off-world beings at the time.
Well, we'll get to that in just a second, yeah. So, and I do remember, now that we talk about this, that there was some kind of contact that had been happening to you, and this to me actually was infuriating because I was trying to get you to tell me...
It's the only thing I wouldn't tell you.
What the heck this thing was. What were these beings like? What happened to you? And the only thing that I remember I could get out of you is you said it had something to do with your American Indian heritage.
And I said that you kept probing. You kept probing.
I did. I wanted to know.
And all I would tell you is that they were tall and blue. And you were like, oh, tall blues, okay. But I was being very vague. That was the only thing I was being vague on.
Right. So after we had been comparing notes for 4 months, I'll never forget this. It was at the end of February, and you called me up, and you were literally almost frantic because this crazy event had taken place. Now, you have to understand, folks, this is now all documented history. This is the part of the story that everybody's heard so many times. It challenged me when Corey first called me up and was telling me all this stuff, because all of a sudden, this guy who has been out of the secret space program since the 1990s. I think you said that it was like 96, right? Yeah, he just said yes, 96. So he'd been out of the game for like 12 years. And all of a sudden, he comes back with this unbelievable story. And this is a story that really defined the whole aspect of what would come from then on, which is he gets pulled back into the secret space program. And you have to understand, too, the heaviness of what it felt like for me. Being a guy who's interviewing him and getting all this information, and then this very, very bizarre stuff starts to happen to him. And I absolutely believed from the beginning, this is happening because we are in contact. This is happening because he's working with me, because he's giving me this information. What are we going to do with this stuff? Where is this going? I have no idea, but it was extremely, extremely fascinating. So once again, could you give us a short version of how you got picked up and where you got taken and what happened in that initial amazing event?
Well, I had been set up for a while learning to trust Gonzalez. And you're talking about when I went to the LOC, right?
Right.
Right. And I was told that...
how long had you known Gonzalez before this?
Months.
Okay.
Months.
So that part you hadn't actually told me.
Yeah,
then.
it was just months. I met him the first time. It was, I believe it was 2012 or 13. And it's when I was going through that.
By the way, in case you have never heard the Corey Goode story before, I have not met this insider Gonzalez, but he was Corey's main contact person in the Secret Space Program Alliance, which actually, as we'll find out here, is a group of people that want all this stuff to be openly shared, and then they decided, Corey was almost kind of like forced on them by the certain extraterrestrial group. But anyway, this is new. I didn't know this. So Gonzalez, you'd been in contact with him going back for a few years before this happened.
Well, actually, months.
Okay, months.
Right. It was right after I had a massive recall after my eye surgery, and I was going through a lot of depression, confusion. And
right, so he had this needle stuck into his eye as part of this eye surgery, and in that process, he was able to remember a lot more of these things that had happened to him in the secret space program. So I guess when you were writing me before that, not all these memories had actually been recovered.
Right. Well, not all of the memories that tied everything together. Right. So. All of the memories came together from 3 different 20 and backs, and I'd only been aware of being on one.
Right.
So I was having a lot of problems, and in the middle of the night, I'm sitting on the computer, have insomnia, and poof, all of a sudden, these little people start running around in my house. They appear in my house, and they're running around looking at all the little knickknacks and everything. Like they were just curious, like they were like kids running around looking at stuff.
They're just a bit of the wee folk.
Yeah. But so anyway, and then Gonzalez was standing there, and he told me not to be afraid, that he had been sent to.
They're not going to take very much stuff, they won't steal anything that important.
Yeah, they won't find the avian blue stash.
No, they won't.
But they brought me up to their ship and worked on me and helped me get. They took away some of the memories, and also helped me just erase the emotion that was tied to them.
Are you saying these little people were the Mayan group that you've referred to? Okay.
Yeah.
When you say little, how tall were they?
4.5, 5 feet at the most.
Oh, okay, cool. I didn't know that part.
Yeah.
So you always learn something new. I mean, that's what's so cool. Is like, because Corey's actually the real deal, every time I ask him questions, something comes out that I hadn't heard before, and another piece locks in. It's like, wow, okay. So this was the first contact you had before you got brought up to the LOC.
Right.
And so they worked on you for healing purposes. Now, what was that like? I mean, you had told me about some kind of deliverance thing that had happened to you. Was that when this happened, or was that something else?
That was something else.
Okay.
Yeah. What happened on this occasion is they brought me up to this giant ship that was made out of rock. And they brought me into a room that I go into this room all the time now for the exams that they do on me and treatments. But they had me sit on this slab, this floating slab, and they brought out, it looked like almost like a horseshoe, and they called it a halo. And they put it over my head and let go of it, and it went shoo, and sucked to my head like a magnet. And they started using a console and asking me to recall certain memories and describe how I felt.
Watch the mic.
And describe how I felt. And while we were locating the memories, they were doing this to locate the memories, to isolate the memories. And when they isolated the memories, they did something, and it vibrated, and there was a release.
So part of what they were doing was helping you remember things that you'd forgotten?
They were asking me to remember it so that they could locate it physically, I guess, in the brain, and then zap it to be able to remove the emotion, or, depending on the memory, remove the actual memory.
Right, because some of the stuff that you had to go through was so traumatic that in order to be able to talk to me or anyone else, it was best for you not to have those memories at this time. Because
if I tried, I would start stammering.
Right.
I'd have
now, this is another interesting side note that I want to add in here, folks, and that is Corey never had a good taping when we were doing our show together. He always was having PTSD. He would start sweating. He would get really nervous. He'd be like, "Can we turn the fan on, please?" And he'd have to go to the bathroom 3 times in 1 half-hour episode. And I was very patient with it because I said, well, this is all consistent with what would happen if somebody was real. So it's a very difficult narrative for people to accept. It has a lot of weird complexities to it, but I remember being in the car with you and driving to go do a taping, and you would be talking about some experience that you'd had, having no idea that I might turn and look at you, because you're not even looking at me, you're looking out the window. And the amount of emotional anguish and stress that he was going through that you could see on his face would win him multiple Oscars, okay? And it's he's not acting. This is not an act. This is not somebody who was waiting to make sure that I looked because he wants to turn in a really good performance. This is what he's really feeling. This is what he's really experiencing. So there's a large amount of literature about people having in-person contacts with ETs in the 1950s, benevolent ones. They were often called the Space Brothers back then. This was a big part of the original UFO movement in the 1950s, down at Giant Rock in Joshua Tree, California. But it's important to point out that the beings at the time, in the 1950s, 1960s, I mean, there's a huge example of this, which is called the Friendship Case coming out of Italy. How many people are aware of that? Raise your hand. Okay, not too many. So there were tall humans, there were regular-sized humans, and there were really short humans. And there was a group of about 60 people in Italy that had extensive contact with these beings over a long period of time. The beings would pose for pictures. They would telepathically tell people, go out in the field and take pictures of our craft in the sky, and people did that. They were allowing some of these people inside the ship, and there's actually photographs of the control surface inside the UFO, some very strange controls that apparently related to how the craft would fly. There's a lot of really, really great classic UFO photos that made it into mainstream Italian magazines at the time. And another really interesting thing was that there was a kind of a cosmic free will principle with these beings, where the beings actually needed to be paid to do this work. So the people in the Friendship Case would get a whole entire truck full of food and clothing. And they would have the truck driver park the truck and then go into the cafe and have a latte and hang out for a while. The beings would then portal all the material out of the truck, and the only thing that was suspicious to the truck driver was how fast they were able to unload the truck. This is really true. So another really interesting thing was EVP, or electromagnetic voice phenomena, where they play the recording on this Italian television show that was done about this, where you would hit record and you'd let the tape run, and then when you played it back, there's this very interesting voice in Italian with this droning sound like this, and it's talking, and it's giving really interesting information. So what would happen is that ultimately, it talks about this in the Law of One, that these contacts led to all sorts of problems. It led to the people who were contacted being hated by others in their community, or so-called community. It led to ego problems, where people started to think they were some kind of savior.
Yeah, Christ complex is the biggest one.
This is a big, big problem, because people start to think, well, I'm the one, I was selected. And so I coached Corey on this when he started to have his contacts. I said, the only way we're going to stay alive is we got to stay really humble. We can't act like we're saviors. We can't act like we're better than other people. We're not saying we're the only ones. We're not saying we're the only contactees. We're just guys who are being able to give a message, and we're just going to try to give that message with as much integrity and honor as we can. So, yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you. And we have encountered incredible, unprecedented opposition, like nothing we've ever seen in the UFO community before. And that's why this is such a landmark event. David and Corey are still talking. We're still friends. And we're still on the same stage together. Bang. There was a whole movement that tried to make it like it was impossible that we could continue to talk, or that he could continue to be an insider. But still to this day, I do believe that what you have said is true. As weird and as crazy as it is, it's not fiction. You did not make this up. These are your real experiences. Nobody is more aware of that than me.
It's the truth as I know and believe it.
That's right. That's right. That's right. So I know that most of you are familiar with this, but I do feel like this one foundational event was really significant. So you said the first event was Gonzalez and these Mayans showing up. But let's now go to the infamous trip to the LOC, because I remember when you told me this on the phone, and I said, man, this is just wild. And I knew, like, wow, my life has just gotten one hell of a lot more interesting. Because I'm talking to this guy, he's telling me all this great stuff. It fits in hundreds and hundreds of correlations that I'd never put online. And I did that on purpose, because I knew that if somebody was fake, they wouldn't know all this stuff. But every time I found a real insider, there were dozens and dozens of connections to this greater body of material, which unfortunately, now that I've disclosed most of it, it's a lot harder to vet people out. But at the time, I hadn't disclosed any of it. I was holding on to so much stuff. I couldn't talk about it because it was very, very dangerous. So let's talk about that night and how did you get picked up? Let's just go through the whole sequence of events as to what happened and where you ended up.
Well, I was told to expect a craft to pick me up in my backyard.
Told by Gonzalez?
Gonzalez.
Okay. This is after you'd gone through this healing process.
Yes, this was much later. Okay. Yeah. I was told to expect a craft to pick me up in my backyard. So I got ready, was waiting in the backyard, and
So you were given a date and a time of when this was going to happen. Okay.
Yes.
And you got dressed and went out into your yard.
Yes, and one of these dart craft came and landed in my front yard, and it was the size of a SUV.
Right, and in case you haven't heard this before, he described a triangular craft with 2 seats in the front and 3 seats in the back. It's kind of a black triangle. It hovers above the ground. And one of the things that is so unbelievably fascinating is that although it was the declassification of this particular issue happened starting a couple of years ago, it was only in April of this year that all these news articles started to come out about the U.S. Navy having an anti-gravity patent that actually works. And in the patent, they have a drawing of the craft, and it is precisely identical to what Corey is saying that he traveled in years before the Navy declassified this document. So now you're going to say the Navy is LARPing off of us? Right? Wait a minute. They describe in great technical detail how this craft works. Imagine a peanut, right? And you got the nut, and then you got the shell. They talk about this thing having a double hull. So imagine a jet that's in the shape of a triangle, but then there's one hull on the inside, and then there's little struts that hold out the next hull 3 inches farther out. And then inside that cavity, they have a noble gas like xenon, and they electrify it with a very high electrostatic charge, and they openly claim in this patent that you can read online now, it's openly public, that by charging up this gas, that somehow you get gravitational waves, and that it actually flies without wings. But then they kind of say, well, it's a theoretical concept. It's a theoretical model, but we think it's going to work. Well, that's the first step. That's how they always start, isn't it?
Yeah. I think it works. So I get on this craft, and there's this woman on the craft next to me, and she has.
I remember this. Yeah.
She has long brown hair. She had long brown hair. She was attractive, and she was very, just excited, blown away. And she kept saying, "Can you believe this? Can you believe this?" And it was a little annoying. She was just, So
come on, let's just enjoy the ride to the moon here.
Yeah, come on. So we flew to the moon.
Fly me to the moon. Let me see.
And
That's prophecy, man. Frank Sinatra, he was tapping into something, bro. Come on. See, Ben was laughing. At least you laugh. They're just so tripped out right now. They're like, oh yeah, that was funny. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So anyway, we are cleared to land, and we fly in through this small crater. And after we fly over the LOC, we see the remnants of the former swastika shape.
What does LOC mean exactly?
Lunar Operations Command.
Now, you were familiar with this already? You'd seen this before?
Yes.
Okay. So this is what exactly?
Many years.
This is some kind of base on the moon. Let's pretend that people don't know this. So
when I had visited the base in the 80s, it was a lot less built out, and there was a very obvious shape of a swastika, the way the buildings were made, because it was handed over to us by the Nazis.
Right.
But I noticed that it had been built out quite a bit. There was a lot more infrastructure around the crater. So anyway, we fly into the crater, and I saw a familiar view. The girl next to me was freaking out. Flying real fast down towards a small crater can freak somebody out.
Freaking out as in like afraid?
Yes, yeah. She was freaking out.
So the craft keeps you in your seat, I would assume, regardless of whether you're upside down or sideways or whatever.
Right.
Okay.
But your brain...
But you're feeling and you're seeing yourself literally plunging right towards the surface of the moon at high speed.
Yeah, it looks like you're headed towards a little tunnel.
Right.
You're headed towards it very quickly. And then as soon as you go through the opening, it curves under. It's almost like when you dive in the water and you do your arms in a certain way and you cut real quickly. Right. You'd go through and then cut. And when we cut and leveled out, we could see the bay of the Lunar Operations Command, the area that was below ground in a basically a lava cavern.
Right, and this is something that Rene Armenta. Are you here, buddy? Rene Armenta?
Somewhere.
Oh, in the back. All right. You animated this for us, right? This is your animation, yeah. So we do have an animation of this. Maybe we can pop it in post. Ooh.
Maybe.
But it's really cool because Rene did the whole thing, and so we've animated it all. And I remember in the animation that once you're inside the hole, It's like there's a big cavern under the surface of the moon, and then you see kind of the side of what looks like a giant bell-shaped base with all these very intricate lights on it.
Right, with bay doors.
So this thing is massive in size. How many people you think are in there, working in there?
Hundreds.
Wow.
Hundreds in that area.
Okay.
But there were a lot of other, it was very busy. There were a lot of other dart craft and other craft. And when we went in and landed in the landing bay, there were people everywhere, standing in, usually the stairs going down from the landing bay. There's one person can go down them at a time. They were thin. And you would see people standing in line to go down the stairs. And then there was another platform that people were standing in line on. It's almost like people trying to get into these conferences. There were these long lines going around the walls. And the people were, they didn't really seem like they knew what they were there for.
I remember you telling me that some of them seemed like they were still in their pajamas.
They were.
Right?
Yeah, most of they would look like normal people. There were 2 different rooms, 2 different lecture halls, and it looked like a giant college lecture hall, each one, and they were like back to back. The buildings.
Right. I remember actually one of the things that Corey shared with me that I admit feeling let down about, right, was we've all seen Star Trek: The Next Generation. We've all seen so many movies. We expect that, like, when you walk into some space base, that you're going to see these doors go like this, and they kind of open up on their own, and it's, like, really cool. And then you were like, nah, man, it's just doors just like there are on Earth. Shit, man. Why can't they build something cooler than that?
Right.
But they're ordinary doors with ordinary door handles. So once you're on the moon, if you don't look out the window and see the lunar surface, you might have no idea where you are.
Even more confusing than that, there are people, let's say, just for example, that you go to work somewhere in Las Vegas, and they tell you, okay, go into this elevator, and you're going to end up on a different floor, a floor that no one knows about. So they go in, they push the button, the elevator takes them to what they think is a different floor, but it's really the Lunar Operation Command. And they have fake windows with television screens that project as if you're looking out down onto the boulevard below from...
Well, and I remember, actually, this is very interesting, William Tompkins, who, of course, give him a big round of applause. Again, in just in case this is your first introduction to the Corey Goode material, it is quite the cosmic narrative, and we have this World War II veteran who comes forward a couple of years after Corey first started talking, who wrote an entire book, Selected by Extraterrestrials, is the name of the book. And it's very strange. I mean, I'll be honest with you, it's not in linear order. There's a lot of strange stuff in there. I was able to befriend him, and I started to discover in the course of our conversations that he's validating everything that Corey was saying. He was there in World War II, just real quick. In World War II, apparently there were 23 American spies that had gotten embedded into a German Nazi secret space program being run out of Antarctica, that there were bases under the ice in Antarctica, natural volcanic heat that was melting these domes and these places that people were working. And these 23 insiders were giving him briefings. He was the one debriefing them and putting together these packages, which they would then bring to the top brass of the military-industrial complex in America. And then that, in turn, was being passed along to the president and the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the senior people. And they were having a really, really hard time believing that this stuff was really true, because what were these guys saying? They were saying that they were working on anti-gravity craft in these bases in Antarctica with the assistance of reptilian-looking humanoid extraterrestrials. This is World War II. So this is a very, very curious chapter of history, because independently, William Tompkins was talking about having these experiences where he himself was dealing with what they would call tall whites or Nordics that were actually there to help us develop this technology. William Tompkins himself was given a government project that was supposed to be the full Apollo program that went way beyond just us landing and then leaving. Oh, yeah, we're done. Let's get out of here. The real Apollo project was supposed to include a base that was permanent with military presence that we could then use as a springboard. And they actually asked him to design a craft, which what he designed was a cylindrical shaped craft. He had drawn it in the book. He never knew about Corey Goode. And yet you said, Corey, before, Tompkins had written this book, that you were on board this USS Arnold Sommerfeld. So just real quick, talk about the craft that you had served on before you went to the LOC that night and how that correlated with what Tompkins had drawn.
Well, the Sommerfeld was a smaller type of craft compared to what he had designed, but we flew alongside the larger ones. Okay. They were cylindrical. The craft I was on was cylindrical, but more of a squashed, kind of a slightly pressed cylinder to where it flattened out a little bit. And on the sides, it had extra fuselages type of structures. It made it look kind of like a hot dog. So right. It's kind of a derogatory statement the Marines would make about it when they were serving on the hot dog. Right. But the longer cylindrical craft that matched very well with Tompkins, the ones that I saw were they were modular. Everything that he had talked about, wow. It matched up.
And one of the really interesting things here is that Tompkins never got told that his designs were actually used. He felt like he had done all this work and that the whole thing got dropped. But another really interesting thing is that you've all seen images of NASA Mission Control and how all these guys are seated at these kiosks and they have their little desk with their little screen and their little keyboard and stuff. Tompkins actually designed that on a contract. That was his design because it was part of the Apollo program. And he really was the founding father of Apollo, but it's just that what he designed went much farther than the part that they openly, publicly used. So anyway, let's go back now to, before this is why I brought this up. Because we were talking about people taking an elevator and then they end up in what they think is an underground base, but they might actually be off planet. And we can go into this too, that they might even be in a different time.
Never even know that they're...
They'd never know.
Never know.
Yeah. So, just real quick on that, one of the things you told me more recently that some of you guys might not have heard of, describe for me how when you were in the secret space program that it did appear, or you knew, that certain people had come from different times in Earth's history.
Right. In the 20 and back, they would pull people from different time periods as well. You would be serving alongside, and you weren't allowed to talk about what year you lived in, where you were from, nothing like that. But different time periods, people have just the way they talk, the way they carry themselves, it's completely different. And some of these people were carrying themselves as though they were from, the World War II era. Right. The jargon they used, just their vernacular, the way they carried themselves, you could tell that they were out of time.
So in that case, do you think that they had been brought forward into the future to work when you were, or do you think that you were being brought back into the World War II era?
I think that we were all being pulled into a separate time.
That's an interesting shot. Kind of makes me freaked out a little bit. There's somebody behind us. I don't even know where he is. Anyway, okay, go ahead.
I don't know what I was saying.
Oh, it's that camera right there. I just saw it. Okay. I
thought there was a shadow being behind us or something.
It's that camera right there. That was a little trippy. I'm like, whoa, how the hell did the cameraman get behind us and I don't see him? Okay. You get paranoid talking about this stuff, like, damn.
David,
what's going on?
There's also one underneath your seat.
Oh, no.
Okay, I made that up. But hey, I just wanted to let everyone know it's 9 p.m. right now.
Yeah, I need to get out too.
Y'all
no,
are
we're
welcome
gonna keep going, man. Well, you want to have me keep going with Corey? There we go. Okay, we're done.
All right, well...
Unless you're tired.
Well, Uncle
Davey... You got to go to the bathroom.
Uncle Davey, it's on you. So
Okay.
however long you want to keep going.
All right, well, let's just get...
Yeah, if someone could catheterize me real quick, I think it'd be okay.
Why don't you run off? Let's have security so you don't get accosted in the hall, and I'll tell the Tompkins story, and then I'll summarize it when you
All
get
right.
back. Okay, this is great. You guys enjoying this? All right, very good. I don't need to sit down, so I'll just pace around like a madman on stage. You've all seen me do this many, many times. This is the real David Wilcock stuff, you know. The pacing madman. Okay. So William Tompkins, it's very interesting because Tompkins and I predominantly talked about my personal life. I'm just being really honest. I really admired him, and he was like a mentor or father figure to me. And the main thing that he was doing for me was to cultivate this idea that I could actually be loved, that I could actually find the right woman to spend the rest of my life with. And that's most of what we talked about. And I found that person with Elizabeth Wilcock, my wife. I had had so many unpleasant experiences, and I had become essentially paranoid, distrustful, and this man just had such an open heart. He was so loving and giving, and he just consistently reinforced the idea that there is someone out there for me, there is the right person, and I will find that person. And thank God he was right. Honest to gosh. Yeah. So, thankfully, I mean, now that he's passed on, I did record every conversation that I had with William Tompkins, just like I've got hundreds and hundreds of recordings of conversations with Pete Peterson. And William Tompkins did not go through all of his material in the first book, Selected by Extraterrestrials. In fact, he had planned out a trilogy. And one of the things that was so frustrating to me was that he didn't want to tell me everything that was in the trilogy because he was worried that I might accidentally leak the information and spoil the book. There's apparently a second book that he was about 2/3 of the way finished with. It hasn't been published yet. It needs editing and it needs to be finalized. So let's hope that we can get that book out because I'd really love to see part 2. But there was one story that William Tompkins had that he actually told me about that he was so embarrassed by that he didn't ever want to put it into the books and he didn't want to talk about it. And in this story, he had gone to a particular meeting with a particular defense contractor. I don't remember which one. I would tell you if I did. I mean, I know that he worked with some of the biggest names. But that this was in Northern California, and there was a group of people who were in this room, and they had this meeting. There was a lot of seats there. And during the meeting, the roof of the room becomes transparent like glass. And you're literally looking out through the glass onto the surface of an alien planet, like a moon of some kind. Now, for some quirky reason, William Tompkins was he felt so bad about this story that he didn't want to share the story. He felt like nobody would believe him. And I'm like, well, Bill, you got a lot of crazy stuff, man. I don't know why you think this one is any worse. Right? I mean, this is pretty intense. So Corey, that's what we called it, the So Corey show, by the way. Because every question I'd say, so Corey. Right? That's an inside joke. William Tompkins at one point had said that he had a meeting at a defense contractor in Northern California, and that during the meeting, the roof and the walls became transparent, and it was now a glass-like dome, and he was looking out onto some kind of a lunar surface. And for some reason, he was so embarrassed about that story that he never wanted to go public with it. But it's interesting because we talked about this, and I said, well, do you think that this was some sort of projection, or do you think that you were actually transported to this off-planet location? He really didn't know. But I said, I bet that this actually was, that you actually were teleported there and that during that meeting you were in this other location. He couldn't answer that question. He really didn't know the answer.
A lot of times there's no way of knowing. And also, if you're not completely briefed on the technology you're going to be exposed to, then the technology might as well be magic.
Right.
Because
it's like Arthur C. Clarke's famous quote.
Yes, it is magical. And your brain, even when you know about high technology, when some of these things happen, your brain cannot make the connection as to what just happened. So there's this weird, you hear about a brain fart, but I mean, it is this weird brain, it's almost like a small seizure that happens, that your brain doesn't know how to gulf the gap between what it knows and what just happened.
I understand, yeah. And so we're going through this story. I just wanted to bring the Tompkins element in. You're talking about now going through a couple of decks and that there were these narrow stairs that people had to basically go through single file.
Yes.
And I remember when you were telling me this, that a lot of these people seemed really tripped out to be there. This was not a normal thing for them. They were really excited, and it appeared from some of what you were being told that, like, this was an effort that was being made to get more people knowing what's really going on.
Right.
For some as yet to be determined future disclosure that we haven't seen yet, even to this day. Right.
Right, and I have no idea what went on in that second room. I was brought into a giant presentation room where there were a bunch of military and political military-looking people. And they were sitting in the chairs. They were off in little cliques. A lot of them knew each other, but they were speaking with each other. And I was walked right up on stage. It wasn't a stage. But I was walked right up to what you would call the stage, and
I
told
remember,
to stand right there.
So tell us again. Were they all white men, and what were they wearing? Let's go through that real quick.
There were a lot of white men, but there were people of all different colors. There were people that looked like they were from India that wore the suits that had, not the normal collar.
Nehru jacket.
Nehru jacket. There were a lot of very elite-looking people that were full of self-importance that were there, and immediately.
And what were they wearing?
Well, some of them were wearing uniforms, and some of them were wearing
like they had jumpsuits. You said, right?
Jumpsuits.
Yeah. Okay. And what were the colors of the jumpsuits?
Well, they had people wearing blue jumpsuits. They had people that had different multicolored jumpsuits. Some of them were blue and maybe gray or grayish blue. Okay. But so all of these people, they looked like they knew they were there for something important, but didn't know the details. That was the feeling I got. Right. And I was walked right up to the front, about as far from Beth as I am now, to the closest person.
Although Beth looks a lot better than these guys in the jumpsuits, I assume.
Absolutely, much better. Yeah.
As does Allison, of course.
Yeah. So I was just told to stand there, no instructions, and then Gonzalez walked off, leaving me there by myself. And so I'm standing there, and I kind of put my hands together, and I'm becoming more and more uncomfortable.
Super awkward, yeah.
Very awkward. And
sort of like when Ben is on stage. Oh, damn! I just got you, bro. No, you're great on stage. I love it. All the best to you, buddy. I love you, man.
Basically. So I'm standing there feeling really uncomfortable, and military types seem to notice when you're uncomfortable, and they started, the guys in the front started heckling me, asking me what I was doing there. I was wearing a NASA hat that I had got on family vacation.
Which I still have.
I gave it to him, that's right.
That's right. It's historic, man. It's worth a lot of money.
It's been on the moon.
It does trip me out knowing that I have a NASA hat that was actually on the moon.
Yeah.
That's very
One of the
cool.
few things from NASA that actually made it to the moon.
That's right. Kaboom! Whoa, yeah.
So, one of the guys yelled at me, "Why are you wearing that ridiculous cover?" That's what military people call hats. And then the guy next to him, they started berating me, and one of them told me, "Take it off." So I took it off, and I just kind of did like this off to the side, real quick, to kind of spin it to where it would land on the bill, just. And as soon as I spun it, everyone sat back in their chairs in a way that David said that I kind of did during the movie.
Jupiter Ascending movie.
Except people really, a startle response occurred. And there was gasping. And I looked behind me, and the blue avian standing behind me. And the triangle being was standing behind me.
Golden triangle head being. Why couldn't they look more normal? I mean, honest to God, you guys.
And why don't they have a better name?
This kind of jellyfish thing with a triangular head that's yellow. No
weird.
big deal. That's not hard to sell at all.
And yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, guys. The triangle head beings, man. Sure.
Yeah.
Right on.
And
I've been there. I've seen them, bro. Ow, fuck.
And it didn't help that they were standing on their tippy toes, going up and down.
That's right. They got their little feet like this.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Can't it just look like Jesus or something? I mean,
right.
Couldn't it be cool like that? This
Or
weird,
just something
squiggly,
normal.
I got this triangle head.
So
I don't know.
Immediately,
But see, it's so weird, right? Like, if he wanted to tell the story and be taken seriously, it would have just been like the gnome people, right? Or something cool like that. It wouldn't be this weird, crazy yellow spaghetti being. Anyway,
Yeah.
That's what happens. You look for these quirky things when you're dealing with a real story, because the real stories don't fit into nice, neat little boxes. And you said that you had already encountered these blue avian types before.
The blue avians, yes.
And it actually wasn't even until William Henry came out, like a couple years after we started doing this, that he found original images of Horus from the Egyptian wall
That was covered in
frescoes
soot that they cleaned.
that they cleaned it off, and that Horus was always blue. And he's a hawk-headed, bird-headed humanoid being. Isn't that something? So it's like, wow. And then I found out that the Japanese had the Tengu birdmen of the mountains that, again, had an avian bird-like face on a human body, and they were blue, and they're always drawn as blue.
And the minute I started telling you some of these details, you had a suspicion that they were connected to the...
Well, let's get into that in a second. Yeah. So you have... you had said there were 3 beings that materialized behind you, right?
2.
Or there was only 2. Okay. Yeah. So there was a golden triangle head being, and there was a blue avian, which was identified as Ra Tirer. Mm-hmm. Now, had you gotten that name in these private contacts you'd had before?
Yes.
And what was if you can talk about it now, I don't know if you can, but what was the form that these earlier contacts that you couldn't tell me back in the day had taken? How did it happen?
Well, they started off in dreams, and the dreams started becoming more and more intense and real, until a point to where they appeared in front of me. They were acclimating and preparing me for the contact. And when they appeared in front of me, I was sitting on a couch with my dog. And all of a sudden, it appeared. And my dog freaked out. My dog like kind of got real tense and looked at Tirer and then looked at me like, "Are you seeing this?" And I was like, I looked at her, and she stuck her head behind the small of my back and just started shaking.
Oh, wow.
And that was her response.
So the whole like
response.
The whole like little dumb brave dog thing, that didn't happen.
No.
None of that kind of stuff at all.
No.
She's like, "Whoa, this thing is way too big, way too creepy. I'm out of here, Dad. You're on your own.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do my dog stuff."
No. So anyway, I'm at the LOC. Tier tells me as soon as he appears, he says, repeat what I say exactly as I say it. And then he introduces himself, I am Ra Tier. And I introduced him, and Tier said that he would take questions. Wouldn't you love to have that right now? Right? So,
Just a minute, folks.
I will.
No, we're not doing that. We're not doing that at all.
No channeling. There was none was needed in this case.
Greetings, beloved.
And, all of these people, they just started, and they were prepared to ask questions because some of them had written down questions. I don't think they knew who they were going to be asking questions from.
So this was a planned meeting.
Yes.
And it's interesting, too, because it appears that Ra, if we want to use that term, Ra could not speak directly to them. They needed to use a human intermediary for some reason.
Yeah.
Like there's a law of free will or something where they couldn't talk directly.
Right.
And you gathered pretty quickly that this was a really high-level meeting that these guys had been waiting for some time.
Some of them, yes,
Right.
Had been waiting for and had some sort of pre-knowledge, prior knowledge.
Okay.
It seemed of the Blue Avians because of the questions that were asked. One of the guys had a prepared question and he asked, "Are you the Ra from the Law of One?" And so obviously they had enough foreknowledge to formulate that question.
Well, and tell everybody, in case they haven't heard this before, what was the actual answer?
They asked you, "Are you the Ra from the Law of One?" And I looked at Tier, and he just had me say, "I am Ra Tier." That was just his answer.
And this immediately caught my attention because in the Law of One material, which of course I had been studying by this point since 1996, so that's 18 years, right? I had very distinctly identified that this group, first of all, said that they identified with the hawk. They made it clear that the image of Horus was similar to them. So I knew to be on the lookout for a being that would have a humanoid body and a bird-like head. If this was in fact, if Horus was actually a depiction of them, which they said it was. And they also talk in the Law of One about the totem animal being the hawk. In fact, the very last thing that Don Elkins ever says in the Law of One before his untimely death, in session 106, the very last question of session 106 is where he said, "Thank you for showing me the image of the hawk. It brought me comfort." That's the last thing he ever said in the entire Law of One. It's very interesting. So every single time that Ra in the Law of One material answers a question, they would start by saying, "I am Ra." And in fact, this became a validation method that let you know that they were really talking and it wasn't somebody else, or that somebody else had gotten in on the channel. So there was actually only a couple of times in the whole Law of One material where Dr. Don Elkins, the questioner, asked a question and the answer starts without them saying, "I am Ra." And when that happens, you know they're really mad at him, that he's not asking the right kinds of questions. They basically only want him to ask questions that would matter as much in 10,000 years as it matters today. They really want to talk about philosophy, which that philos, Sophia, philosophy is the love of wisdom, okay? Philo means love, Sophia means wisdom. So they really only want to talk about philosophy. And of course, in case you don't know this, it's a very important aside to add in at this point, that I had started to read the Law of One in 1996. It summarized for me over 300 books that I had read in the preceding 3 years. It tied together so many diverse pieces of information that I had been researching that I thought I had made these original discoveries about, such as the idea that the universe was built on geometric energy fields, such as the idea that the Earth had a global grid of 3,300 different pyramids and natural stone monuments all over the planet that were all on this one grid, which is a combination of two geometric forms, an icosahedron and a dodecahedron. I knew that the continents were shaped by this grid. I knew that each of the node points of the main parts of the grid were areas where there were statistically much higher numbers of ships on the sea and airplanes in the air that would disappear, the Bermuda Triangle being one of the main 12. So I had been really into the grid. I go into the Law of One, and they're talking about geometric energy centers which surround and shape the planetary sphere. I mean, there was so many things in the Law of One material, which I'm going to talk about in the workshop tomorrow. Shameless plug, but you all already paid for it. So it's like, what do I care? Right? I don't need to plug it because it's already sold out. So sorry, if you want to get in, we don't have any more tickets available. And it's not being live streamed, so it's only a smaller group. But anyway, I am going to go through some Law of One stuff tomorrow and some of the science. We're going to do some interesting things. So anyway, the Law of One was my backbone. It was my philosophical work of art that I loved to hold up, and I actually lived with the people for 2 years. I was very surprised at how mundane their life was, to be honest with you, that they watched television, and Ra said that television creates anonymity, distraction, and sleep. It's like, well, why are y'all watching TV every day for like from 5 o'clock to 9 or 10 at night? And it was a very interesting thing to see how this material not only basically explained everything that I thought I'd made as original discoveries, but took it much, much, much farther. And so over the years, the Law of One was my source text. I built a whole scientific war machine off of it, really taking war against the cabal and how much they've distorted science, because you can basically rewrite every branch of science out of the Law of One. So this is the most important thing in my life, and I'm definitely, at the time at least, definitely was the most prominent public figure talking about the Law of One. It's so hard to understand, most people didn't get it at all. So Corey and I talk every day for 4 months, right? And then he's telling me this story, and he tells me on the phone, I'm sure we have the recording somewhere, I should dig that thing out. Somebody asks, are you the Ra from the Law of One? And they simply answer, I am Ra Tyr Air. And that is exactly what I would expect the real Ra to do. Because there's all this crazy stuff in the Law of One. If you've read it, they always talk of first distortion. First distortion, you're like, what in the hell is the first distortion? They talk about this over and over again. It's the law of free will. It's the prime directive, if you look at Star Trek. It's this idea that they can't just tell us who they are. They can't just show up in the sky. So many people get so upset with Corey Goode, and they get upset with this material, and they say, I want the proof, man. Where's the proof? The whole point with the Law of One is truth without proof. Sorry if you don't like that, but what they want is for us to make a leap of faith. They will be able to tell us a certain amount of stuff, but there are lines that they can't cross, because let's go back in history and let's look at these islands off the east coast of Australia. During World War II, they were worried that the Germans or the Japanese would try to invade Australia. That never actually happened, but the United States military went into these islands that had never seen Westerners before. They had no technology, and so what happens is they land on these islands and they give people cargo out of their planes. Then they left and they told these islanders they were going to come back, but then the war ended and they never went back. So the islanders created these things called cargo cults, where they literally started to make religious effigies of the goggles that the military would wear, of the walkie-talkies they had. They would build entire planes out of bamboo, and they would paint the letters USA on their chests and march in formation with bamboo guns, because they worshipped the U.S. military as gods. So this is an actual historical example, you can look it up, that shows us a phenomenon they call enculturation, which means that when a sufficiently advanced society drops in on a native population, that population turns them into gods, and it totally wipes out their free will. No longer do they... the cargo cults totally ruled these islands, and they even tried to bring some of the people from these islands to the mainland and show them our society. And the guy went along with it, and then he goes back and he says, oh, Satan is trying to deceive us, to deny our religion. Right? Really, I'm serious. So this is the biggest complaint that we've had online, is like, well, why couldn't Corey Goode film one of these beings in his house? And what happened when you tried? Because I know you did try.
I did try. I did try. It would depend. Either the battery would completely drain out of the camera, or they would not show up.
Right.
Hey, David, sorry to interrupt. We have that animation that you guys were talking about ready to load from Renee Armenta. Does everyone want to see that? All right.
This is the trip into the LOC, Lunar Operations Command.
I don't mean to interrupt you guys, but that's pretty cool.
No, it's very, very cool.
Well, I did want to point out something else that David had said about faith and how Raw had they delivered information to us. I asked Tier why they like to work with people that have Christian backgrounds so much, and it was stated that it was the vibration of the Christ consciousness that they identified within us. But the number one reason was that Christians knew how to live by faith, and they needed people who would live by faith.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things, let's just talk about the Christianity and Law of One connection for a minute, because first of all, Carla Ruckert herself, the woman who was the instrument for the Law of One, was a Christian. The Law of One contact required that they had the Bible open to a particular passage that she liked over, above her head, and then they also would burn an incense stick. And so it was well known that Carla was a devout Christian, that she was still going and singing at this Lutheran church. And when you actually read the Law of One, and it wasn't really until I started working with Leon Isaac Kennedy that I began to take this part a lot more seriously. First of all, the Great Pyramid, we now know from the Giza alignment that this clearly appears to have been built, or at least was commemorating a time 12,500 years ago, the last major Atlantean catastrophe, of which there have been others. The pyramid itself does appear to be a monument to the coming Christ. And there's actually quotes in the Bible about that. The pyramid, of course, is very interesting because it has a capstone that is missing. And there is a line in the Bible that says, the stone the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone. Now, this is a paradoxical statement because a cornerstone, normally, there's 4 of them because it's the corners of a building, but a chief cornerstone would imply there's only one. Well, that would be the capstone on the Great Pyramid. So it actually implies that Jesus represented the capstone. Then there's this whole science of the passageways inside the Great Pyramid where there's a certain alignment where the constellation star Draco, and it doesn't mean the reptilians in this case, but this particular star in the Little Dipper shines down into the bottom of the descending passage where you could actually have a pool down there and you would see the star in that pool of liquid. And when that is happening, when it's shining down the descending passage and the Pleiades star cluster is directly overhead, then you begin counting 1 pyramid inch equals 1 year. The pyramid inch is a very interesting metric because if you take the exact distance from the North Pole to the South Pole of the Earth and you break it up into 500 million units, it turns out that it's slightly different than the normal English inch. It's like 1.0039 English inches. So our regular inch that we use is a little tiny bit off. But if you use that perfect pyramid inch and you count 1 inch equals 1 year, starting with this alignment where the stars are lined up and then there's these 2 scored lines, as they call them, at the beginning of the pyramid in the passageways, every major deviation in the size or the shape or the contour of the passages of the pyramid, of which there are many, actually corresponds to historical events, major historical events. And it gets World War I, it gets World War II, it gets the invention of the printing press, it gets the Israeli exodus out of Egypt, it gets all kinds of really cool stuff, but by far, the most important historical events flagged in the Great Pyramid were the birth and the ascension of Jesus. That is the most notable change in the entire pyramid, and it shows very clearly in the pyramid timeline that this created the path for ascension. And then you go up into the king's chamber and you got this open sarcophagus, okay? The open sarcophagus, according to the Edgar Cayce readings, in case you don't know this, the American psychic, born 1877, died 1945, 14,000 documented medical readings on record. Yes. Plus another 11,000 that were lost in a horrible fire when he lived in, I believe, Dayton, Ohio. And so actually a total of about 25,000 of these readings, 14,000 of which survived, in which he would go into an unconscious trance state, just like the Law of One, and then be able to diagnose accurately someone's medical condition and prescribe a treatment and explain the spiritual reasons for why they were sick, knowing nothing about the person except their name and their address and an agreement that they would be at that address at the time the reading was going to be conducted. Cayce's readings went into reincarnation, they went into Atlantis, they went into all kinds of very, very interesting material. And one of the things the Cayce readings said was that this particular other channeled work called the Aquarian Gospel of Jesus the Christ was in fact all authentic. And in that material, the Aquarian Gospel of Jesus the Christ, it says that Jesus actually used the pyramid in Egypt to complete his ascension. That he went into the sarcophagus, that there were people who knew what they were doing in there, these trained priests, and that he was able to achieve all of the advancement that led to him being able to do the miracles that we see in the New Testament, that he was activated in the pyramid. In fact, it may very well be that the Great Pyramid itself was partly, if not almost entirely, built to be able to have him complete this mission, because it's written right into the passageways. But then you say, well, wait a minute, David, wait a minute. The pyramid is that Illuminati symbol. You're talking about the all-seeing eye on the top of the pyramid. When you read the Law of One, they say that the main reason why they were doing this was to apologize to us because their words had been taken totally out of context, had been distorted by the priesthoods of the time, that they started doing human sacrifices inside the pyramid, that they took all of these originally positive symbols and converted them into something negative. So really the whole, and they admit this in the Law of One, the whole foundation of what we would now call the Illuminati, the whole religious background of the Cabal, started out as a bastardization of a positive teaching given by Ra, who built the pyramid as a harbinger for the coming Christ and for our collective ascension. So they really, really have had trouble, and they've tried to undo this. So there's several clues in the Law of One that are very significant talking about this. For example, when they were asked, how did you build the pyramid? You can go read this. I think it's in session 9. Maybe I'm wrong on that. But anyway, they say, how did you build the pyramid? And Ra answers, we built the pyramid with everlasting rock. Now that's not like a technical term. It's a very strange term. And it was only years later when I went back and did the research that I discovered, wait a minute. The book of Isaiah in the Old Testament describes the everlasting rock in the desert, and it's clearly implying the pyramid. So this is one of the ways in which the Law of One material clearly intended to get you to read the Bible. Another great example is they never call it ascension, they always call it harvest. And people have gotten so upset about this harvest term. Like, what does this harvest term mean, right? This idea that people are going to be ascending, but it's got this kind of connotation. The only research that I've ever been able to find after doing this for over 20 years that connects to the word harvest is in the book of Matthew in the New Testament, where Jesus makes the analogy of the planet Earth being like a wheat crop, and that at the time of the harvest, the weeds will be plucked from the wheat one by one, gathered into bundles and burned. And then they say, the harvest is the end of the world, and the reapers are the angels. So again, there's a clear biblical tie-in here, which is very fascinating, because then this would mean that Ra, in biblical terms, is actually one of the archangels or seraphim or cherubim or however you want to call it. But this is not some weird, scary alien race. This group is actually responsible for our safety, to make sure that we go through this ascension peacefully. And in this thing, and I'm about to hand it back to Corey here, in this initial download that these people got, obviously they were aware that the Law of One was true, because in Book 5 of the Law of One, which didn't come out till 1998, I got it the week it came out, there was all this stuff that Carla and Jim had taken out from the original 4 books. And it talks about a secret space program. It talks about that they had bases on Mars, bases on the moon, bases under the earth. They talk about Area 51. They don't use the name, but they describe the area and what's going on. And at the time, nobody had heard about this yet. There was no Bob Lazar yet. Bob Lazar didn't come out till 1989 talking about Area 51. So at the time, they were very uncomfortable because they didn't believe that this could be true, so they actually withheld it from the books because they didn't want it to damage their credibility. So the secret space program stuff was in there, and it appears that these guys, just like me, these people in this off-planet lunar base, had said, wait a minute, how in the world did the Law of One know about everything that we're doing? How did they know about these different alien races? How did they know about the bad guys? How do they know about the good guys? It's way too perfect. There's way too much going on here. So...
I'm sorry, what year was the Law of One?
1981 and 1983.
Okay.
And then Lazar came out in 1989. So nobody knew about Area 51 back in 1981 at all. So another thing that I find very fascinating, and I want to throw this back to you right after I put this in, is that in 1999, 2000, 2001, there was a website online called Cyberspace Orbit by Kent Steadman. Cyberspace Orbit, the main feature of this website was these photographs from the Solar and Heliospheric Observatory, or SOHO, satellite. And these photographs were of what he was calling sun cruisers. Now, they didn't know everything, because what you would see is planet-sized bright objects coming off of the sun or going around the sun, or in some cases flying into the sun and then creating coronal mass ejection. And you could look at where Mars was or where Venus was or certain planets, and they would move along at a nice steady speed, and then one photograph or a couple photographs from SOHO would have an equally massive object, but it's zipping along through space. And then the CCD sensors on the camera, which detect light, were getting blown out because these things were so bright, causing these horizontal lines to spread on either side of the object, which made people think that it was like some kind of a cruiser with wings, okay? But then we find out that no, this is just what normally happens when the light is so bright that it actually creates a line, because it's like it's blowing out the image sensors. So I had been very, very interested. Kent Steadman, and he's deceased now. He never really wrote about this stuff very well, so it didn't really get too popular. He didn't really know how to write. And I was interested in it, but I wasn't really covering it on my website at the time. But for years and years, I had wondered, what in the world are these gigantic planet-sized objects doing around the sun? And that ended up being one of the main questions that they were asking. So this is another really cool thing. When you start telling me this story, this lost research lead that had been lost to me for 14 years, and now they're asking, what is up with this? So let's talk about that for a minute.
And I didn't understand half of what was being asked. Right. I was answering questions, and I didn't know what was going on a lot of these things I hadn't heard about. Right. It was stuff that had happened when I was not in the
But let's talk about the spheres, because some of the questions they were asking from the audience related to these spheres, right?
Yeah, I vaguely remember they were asking about the spheres that were coming in and out of our solar system, both through the sun and from the outer regions.
Right. So that was one of the things where I knew I struck gold, that you were telling the truth, because I'd never talked about the sun cruisers or Kent Steadman's website. And now it's like, okay, those NASA images were taking pictures of real stuff.
Right.
And the narrative ended up unfolding as to what they were, but it began on this first visit. I remember from asking you.
Right, and then it went into the Blue Avians talking about spheres that were attenuating activity from the sun, but they were also talking about how the sun acts as a portal.
Right. So in short, folks, this is very fascinating because I had done an enormous amount of scholarly work, scientifically based analysis of the law of one. And there's so much to explore. There's so many rabbit holes to go down. And one of them is you have the Mayan calendar, in which each of the cycles that the Mayan calendar is counting correspond directly to cycles that we see in the inner planets and even the outer planets of our solar system. In other words, the cycles that the Mayan calendar is counting are exact subdivisions of the orbital periods of these planets. And that is amazing. Nobody talks about that. I'm one of the only ones that's talked about that. Then you look at the total length of the Mayan calendar, and it's 5,125 years. And if you take 5 of those, it adds up very closely to the precession of the equinoxes, which is this 25,000-year cycle that they talk about in the Law of One. And I'd been researching this for years, and I knew the main principle of the Law of One, which really validates what's in Christianity, is this idea that what they call harvest is coming our way, that there's going to be some sort of ascension event. Now, in the Law of One, they never say solar flash, they never say the sun is going to do anything, but they do talk about a quantum leap. They talk about a time window for this, and they say it's roughly 30 years after the time that we were talking. Well, they were talking in 1981, and so Don Elkins, the guy asking the questions, had never heard of the Mayan calendar, had never heard of 2012, and then so he asked, is it the year 2011 that you're talking about, or will it be more spread out? And they said, yes, this is an appropriate, probable, possible time nexus for harvest. So the Law of One literally hangs their ass out over the line and gives you the 2012 date and says there's going to be a quantum leap where the actual physics of our solar system changes that activates us into some sort of light body if we are ready to graduate, which means we've become a loving person, we're a kind person, we're enough service to others in our orientation that we're ready to make that quantum leap. We're not going to have to reincarnate. I don't know about you, but I'm done with diarrhea, I'm done with vomiting, and I'm sure done with poison ivy. Okay? Don't want that anymore.
Rough week last week, huh?
It's been a rough life. It's been a rough run on third density Earth, I'll tell you what. Absolutely. So let's just be clear on this, that I also had seen in 2008, the crop circle formations were amazing, and I'd looked at them for a long time, and I really was very confident that this was an authentic extraterrestrial gift we were being given. These amazing geometric diagrams showing up in wheat fields in the middle of England, and of course the wheat, again, is a metaphor from the book of Matthew about the ascension, the idea of the wheat being separated from the weeds. So the crop circles were quite fascinating. And then in 2008, they actually came out with one that shows you the alignment of the planets as it would appear on December 21st, 2012, the Mayan calendar end date. And then the farmer tried to desecrate the crop circle by drawing these 3 lines through the middle of it. And then the beings say, oh, you don't like crop circles? Well, here, let's come back and we'll give you twice as many. They drew another solar system ring next to the first one, but there's nothing inside. But the most important point is that this formation that illustrates the end of the year 2012, the sun, when they redid the crop circle, when they came back and redid it, they widened the diameter of the sun all the way out to the orbit of Venus. And to me, this clearly was prophetic suggesting that there would be some kind of solar energy release at the end of the year 2012. So I'm out there as a Law of One scholar, earnestly trying to raise awareness about 2012. As you guys probably know, 2012 was my main platform from like 2008 onward. But that kind of builds a flaw into the system, because if nothing happens in 2012, you're basically effed, right? So of course, December 21st comes and goes, nothing happens, and it wasn't until you got the year 2013 comes and goes, 2014 comes and goes. I basically kind of felt like I'd gotten washed out of the conference circuit. People were so mad about 2012 not happening. I took the job with Gaia starting in 2013. I'm like, well, I got to have another source of income because conferences aren't going to work anymore. Everybody's mad at me. So I started to do the Gaia stuff, and I was very happy to have a steady job because honestly, I didn't know what was going to happen. 2012, when the bottom fell out on that, it was like, wow. But then Corey gets contacted in 2015, so it took a little over 2 years, and they start explaining that these giant spheres were brought into our solar system because we were not ready for the solar flash. It would have happened in 2012, but they needed to hold it off. And one last thing I want to toss in here before it goes back to Corey, because again, it was going to be my stage anyway after 9 o'clock, but I do like to talk. Okay, let's just be honest, right? And you love to hear it. Thank you. I appreciate that. But you know, it's more fun if you get to hear from both of us, and I'm not just a question-making Pez dispenser. Okay? So, anyway, as I looked at this material, as I studied the 2012 subject, I realized as the year 2012 was going by, man, we are not ready. I had this whole prophetic outline that I'd gotten in dreams and my own form of psychic readings starting in 1996, where I had clearly seen that there was going to be some kind of alliance from within the military-industrial complex itself that would expose and defeat the deep state Illuminati cabal. That we were going to have disclosure, that we were going to, yes. See, I was telling Elizabeth, you gotta make a rhythmic statement in your voice, and that's when they applaud. If you just do it like this, bang, they start applauding. But if I get people so tripped out that they're like, then they don't necessarily clap right away. So just be advised, it doesn't always work. But we're going to find out tomorrow. Elizabeth is speaking tomorrow. I may introduce her. Make sure you're there for that. She's going to rock the house on the Divine Feminine. All right. Anyway, getting back to this 2012 issue, I knew there was a formula of what we were supposed to see before the solar flash took place, and I became very concerned in 2012 because we didn't have disclosure, we didn't have the exposure of the cabal, all of these things. There was no mass awakening going on. I said, something's wrong here. And I was actually relieved in a way that the solar flash did not happen. But I hadn't understood what the sun cruises were or any of this kind of stuff, but I knew we were expecting a solar flash, and I knew that it would be this game-changer dimensional shift event, as the crop circles and as the Law of One had indicated. So what was so cool was that even from this very first time that you were up there in front of these people, the beings were saying that they brought in these gigantic spheres to literally hold back the solar flash until we as a planet were ready for this to occur, that enough people would get what they needed from this.
Exactly. They stated that it was attenuating the energies that were coming out of the sun.
And And you also were ultimately given visions of this whole matrix of these spheres in a very geometric pattern. Yes. And you saw how the sun was wanting to do this, and the spheres were absorbing the energy.
Yes, and the spheres began to pour in earnest into our solar system at the end of 2011. So,
well, there was some around that period that I saw them on Kent Stedman's site, because you had said that, right? So let's talk about that for a second.
Right. They stated that the sphere, since the 30s, that some of these spheres had been in place. but that since the 1930s, they had been building up to a point to where by 2012 they would be able to attenuate the energies and hold off the solar flash, so that we could be ready for the harvest.
And you also said that you said that a lot more of these spheres started to come in 2011.
Yes, they just started pouring in 2011.
Now, I probably remember your testimony better than you do at this
Probably.
point, which is fine. I have the 180 IQ, right? So there you go. Which people say means I have Asperger's syndrome or something, right? Well, I've never seen any Asperger's come out. I don't know what that is.
You can be an Asperger.
I'm just a meadow muffin outgassing on stage, flapping my gums. There you go. Anyway, the spheres coming into our solar system in 2012, I remember you telling me, was of key concern to the people at this meeting because they would not respond to any type of hailing. So why don't you talk about that?
That's right. When these spheres started coming in from the sun, but also from our from outside of the Oort cloud, we were hailing them, and they were completely ignoring all hails, pretending that the ships that were approaching them, they just didn't acknowledge them whatsoever.
And of course, given the fact that these are literally in some cases the size of Jupiter, right? You said there was 3 different sizes, from the moon size, like Earth's moon, up to Jupiter size.
Right.
This could be tantamount to a absolutely effing massive alien invasion.
Absolutely.
Right? So everybody's freaked out.
And I hadn't heard this information. You had talked about an intruder spaceship the size of a planet that had, is that Pete Peterson information? Or was that
I think they called it the Sentinel or something like that. It happened in the mid-'80s during Reagan's administration, that this giant thing that kind of looked like a soccer ball, like you know how there's lines over the surface of a soccer ball? Well, this had that, and it had a door, a spherical door that opened like an iris on it, that the opening, the circle, was 800 miles wide. Okay, that's how big this thing was. It's just a little door on the thing that opened up. And all these crazy ships are coming out of that hole. And this thing comes in, they tracked it coming in, it starts to circle Pluto, it starts to circle Neptune, it circled Uranus. I'm only going to pronounce it that way. Okay, that's all we're doing. I swear. Let's just let that one sit for a second. Okay, fair enough. We're not going to talk about Klingons or any of that kind of thing, you know. Oh, man. He's dying on stage. David Wilcock is dying on stage. It's all good, though. They were very afraid. They were very, very afraid of this thing they called the Sentinel. And my insider, Jacob, said it was a bunch of a-hole galactic tourists, and we told them to F off. That was his secret space program, Illuminati take on the Sentinel. So that was the first sphere. The experience for them peaked, I believe, in 1987, somewhere around there, is when it finally came to a head. But anyway, it wasn't until the late 1990s that more of these spheres started to come in. And I don't know if they had the same soccer ball geometric lines around the outside like the Sentinel did or not. That was never made clear. But they certainly glowed as brightly as the planets did. And then in many, many cases, when SOHO satellite would capture these images, there'd be an image detector sensor malfunction, right? And for some reason, now SOHO goes down. And so that was one of the things Ken Stedman was doing, is he would notice every time these things would come in, SOHO would mysteriously malfunction at the same time. And so this should have been a really big deal, but none of the main ufologists at the time, because I was a nobody back then, I had a little bitty website, nobody was really reading it, and I wasn't even covering this topic, but none of the big ufologists were getting into this. Why are these planet-sized objects showing up in our solar system. You can clearly see them on Soho. You can clearly compare them to the planets. We know they're the same size. They're moving around. They're doing weird stuff. And when they would show up, Soho would malfunction. And it would somehow not be creating images anymore. And so all of this built up to this momentous meeting where, for the first time, these blue avians apparently introduced themselves. You said, based on the shock reaction they had, it wasn't like they'd seen this particular group before.
I hadn't either. Like I said, I wouldn't even tell you what these beings look like because I was embarrassed. I was.
Yeah.
I had seen all these different types of beings, heard of all these different types of beings, never bluebirds. So it took you forever. It took a long time for me to tell you what these beings look like.
So when they were asked, are you the Ra from the Law of One? And the answer is, I am Ra, basically. It's like, okay, I knew right off the bat, this is fascinating because...
And then you started trying to convince me about Ra.
Oh, yeah. No, I was like, dude, this is bigger than you might realize, okay? These guys appear to be the main extraterrestrial group that basically makes sure that we're going to go through the ascension, and now we're getting all this additional information, including what kind of amounted to an apology for why it wasn't 2012 that had basically, for a little while, ruined my career because I was the big 2012 guy.
They did tell David we said sorry.
They did?
No.
Ah, darn it. I really was hinging on that. Okay. All right, it's 10 o'clock. You guys want us to keep talking, or are you bored and want to go home? Okay, we'll keep talking.
You're going to have to talk about Tompkins again while I go to the restroom. I'm drowning in the water.
That's true. I could use a restroom trip. What are you saying? Oh, yeah. Let's do that. So just to set this up, are you guys ready in the back? Raise your hand if you're ready to play the clip. I'm going to run to the restroom. You going to run to the restroom again? Man, how much piss is in there? Jesus, dude. I haven't gone once. Okay. So they're ready to line this up. This will give Corey a chance to go to the bathroom. I could actually use it as well. I mean, honest to God, I feel like I'm in a fishbowl right now. Okay, just being perfectly honest, a yellow fishbowl. So I'll do that afterwards. I'm very careful not to drink too much water on stage. Anyway, check this out because
Wait a minute. Did it just take like an hour and a half to play that clip? I was out here like 40 minutes ago. What happened?
It's all coming to a head, bro.
David's talking a lot, right?
I talk a lot. I like to talk.
Let's give him a hand.
Thank you.
All right. Well, actually, can we play that clip?
I think we can.
I'm gonna pretend like I'm Corey for a second until this clip gets played.
That's a little scary, but okay. Here we go. Wow. Check it out. Oh, I haven't even seen this one. So this is awesome. This is like the Dart craft landing in his backyard.
This is all Renee, right? Renee.
Yeah, I believe so.
This is amazing, Renee, wherever you are. I can't see you right now. There you are.
So now we know there's this lady freaking out in the back, all excited, up until she flies down into the moon, at which point she gets really disturbed. Oh, yeah, this is definitely extended. There's a lot more going on here. It's number 25. That's good to know. You know, that's some intel we can use. Dart number 25. It's got red and green on the back. I guess that's sort of like port and starboard or something. Now, this is the part where they're flying over, and then the woman freaks out because there's a hole in the lunar surface that he's about to go plunging vertically down into. And there's your Nazi, that's the Nazi swastika with the extra build-out around the outside of it. Originally was just a swastika. And so now they're flying in, and pretty quick here, this is the part where as they're going down vertically, they're around the inside of the crater rim here, and we're going to see how they fly down through the hole in a moment. Yeah, there's the hole. So this is where she really freaked out because they vertically plunged down. Now that's the side of the base on the inside. And it is massive. Apparently, I've been here, but I don't remember any of this stuff yet, and so Corey can't tell me all the things that he actually knows about my experiences here. I still have not recovered these memories. Well, there you have it. That's the whole clip.
Hey, let's give it up for
Armenta.
Renee, you guys.
Yeah.
It's a great animation.
Big round of applause. So awesome. So while we're waiting for Corey to relieve himself for the second time, very unprofessional. You got to hold your piss, man, I tell you. You had to go twice as well?
Hey, man, I'm 50 years old.
Well, you're actually 105, but that's another story.
110. Who's counting?
Or no, now you'd be 110, right? Because you got 320 in backs. That's 50 plus 60, so you're 110 years old. Give him a big round of applause.
So give me a
110-year-old
break.
man.
I have a 110-year-old prostate.
That's true. That's true. So, yeah, he looks good for 110, huh? Looks pretty darn good. Anyway, I'll get you talking about something so then I can go do the same thing. So I'm not in a fishbowl anymore. That'll make this a lot more comfortable. So, why don't you just go through a little more about the types of questions that they were asking you and how in some cases you literally did not even understand the answers. And then I'll duck out here while you do that.
Well, that gives me like 30 seconds of material because I don't remember.
Oh, you don't remember? Okay.
I didn't understand the questions.
All right, well, let's go back to tell them the story about your daughter and the little sketch that was on your hand.
Okay.
Because that's funny, and then I'll come back right away.
All right. So the night before I was supposed to go to the LOC, my daughter wanted to paint my face. She was painting animal faces. And I told her no. I had a meeting the next day, and I didn't want the paint on my face, so she wanted to paint my hand instead. And she painted a green dinosaur on my hand. And I didn't think anything of it until I was standing at the LOC on the stage, and I was starting to get heckled. And at the same time, when they asked me to remove my cover, and I threw it to the side, one of them asked, "Why do you have a reptilian on your hand?" And I looked down, and it was obviously a dinosaur. And I tried to wipe it off, and I couldn't, but they were very curious as to why I had a reptilian on my hand. So now I can give David crap about going to the bathroom. The questions? Well, that's the thing. They were asking questions. Some of them were asking very deep scientific questions, like mathematical questions about certain cosmological constants. How come this and this did not match up? And some of the answers were coming back, your understanding of the nature of the universe is incorrect. And they were having me explain that the universe is a giant torus, and that it's spinning in within on itself, and that we don't have a view of the full universe, and that parts of the universe are traveling faster than the speed of light, and as they are rounding this torus, and there's just a lot that we are unable to see. And there were a lot of scientific questions, military type questions about different beings in different regions of space, but I had no idea what I was answering. And the words were coming from tier air directly just through me. As I would hear them, they would immediately. I didn't have to think to speak. It just happened.
Going into this, so just for everyone, how did you feel during all of this? You can explain like how you felt. What was your experience seeing a blue avian for the first time? Like how did it feel being in front of that?
Well, you don't believe your eyes, obviously. There's some sort of cognitive dissonance that occurs. But one of the weirdest things is when the blue avians are communicating through me, I have this rush of intense love, and my eye, it's like I'm crying the whole time. Tears are just streaming down, and I can no longer really see who I'm talking, the audience. If they were to communicate through me right now, tears just stream uncontrollably as I'm communicating. It's their vibe, the love that they have. It just overcomes you. A lot of the changes that have occurred in me occurred when I interfaced with RE, but they stated that most of the changes that would occur in me would occur just because of me being in proximity to these energies and the effect that they have on my consciousness.
I think that we have any microphone that works. Okay. Oh, now it's back. Now it's back. Okay. Thank you. Thank you back there. So, I really think that one of the paramount questions that's on everyone's mind, and we've never really done this in front of an audience before, but it's so important, is, okay, so the 2012 event, that the beautifully gorgeous Mayan calendar with all of its mathematical sophistication, its connections to planetary cycles, its connections to the 25,000-year cycle, it said December 21st, 2012. The crop circle from 2008 said December 21st, 2012, that solar flash, the sun widens out to Venus. The law of one says it's an appropriate, probable, possible vortex, the year 2011. Everybody really, I think, one of the questions that's on everybody's mind is, okay, when is this thing going to happen, and what's the science behind it? What do we know about that?
Well, some of the science behind it has to do with the cycles and the cycles of the sun itself. And the cycles of the sun have to do with planets within our solar system. When they're in a certain alignment, it seems to kick in the solar minimum. They've learned more recently, and they're hoping...
Now, who's they?
They being scientists that study the cycles of the sun. Recently, they've correlated that a certain planetary alignment occurs when the sun goes in and out of solar minimum and solar maximum. And they're hoping... They've never been able to predict when solar minimum would occur.
Right.
But they're hoping with this new formula that they're going to... This time, they're going to see when we come out of solar minimum, they're going to see if it correlates exactly with this planetary alignment that they've been tracking. And after that, they'll be able to predict from then on out when these will occur. But since it didn't happen in 2012, they stated, being the scientists in the programs, that
These classified projects.
These classified projects, they believed that the next probable and most likely time that this solar flash would occur would be when we came out of solar minimum. Right. And we are just going into solar minimum now.
Okay. So then, with that information in hand, given the fact that the solar cycle itself, in case you guys don't know this, somebody in the audience might not know this, the sun goes from a very smooth surface where there's no sunspots, there's no visible activity, and that's solar minimum. And then over the course of 11 years, it builds up to what they call solar maximum, where at that point you now have all kinds of solar flares going on, coronal mass ejections going on, all these sunspots. The sun's surface becomes very, very active. And if you look at two pictures side by side between solar minimum and solar maximum, they couldn't be more dissimilar. So what you have been hearing is that they concluded that the solar flash, based on the energetic release of what they're now calling in the scientific community, they're calling it a micronova,
yes.
Right? That's
Micronova.
Another thing we can talk about. that
And they started talking about micronovas after you and I.
after we started to talk about it, right? So here's another really, really cool thing. I was doing an event at Estes Park, Colorado. Some of you were there. Well, you were there. Yeah, I know that. So anyway, I was presenting on some new research that had literally just come out about our closest major star neighbor, which is Alpha Centauri, which is actually a collection of 3 stars, right? And the smaller of the 3 is called Proxima Centauri. And Proxima Centauri had a solar flash. And in this solar flash, it was about 10 seconds long, but it released like 10,000 times more energy than it normally would. It was so massive that they actually believe that the amount of energy that hit this Proxima b planet would have scorched off any life that could have existed on the planet. Or some of the scientists were saying this. And Proxima b had been an interesting case because Stephen Hawking had designed this sail, this big aluminum foil kite that's supposed to be hit with a laser. He believed you could get it up to nearly light speed, and that we could send this probe over to Proxima b to see if there was life on that planet. And they had pumped that up in the media, and then, oops, Proxima has this big solar sneeze using William Tompkins languaging. And now it looks like, well, there's probably, if there was any life on the planet, it didn't work. So then it was while Corey was there in the audience, you got the idea, and I have to give you credit for this, that because the speed of light, that Alpha Centauri, Proxima Centauri is 4.3 light years away, that when we saw the solar flash wasn't the actual time, that you had to dial it back 4.3 years in the past. Well, right on stage, I did the numbers, and wouldn't you know that the closest star to us had a solar flash in December 2012, based on the speed of light. That is effing amazing, okay? Because, like, wait a minute. One of the things that you were talking about over the years is that all of the stars around us are all gravitationally interacting. Could you talk about that grouping a little bit?
Yeah, there's if you Google, I believe they call it the local stellar neighborhood. And in the programs, they called it the local star cluster. But it's a cluster of approximately 52 stars that are held together in a gravitational eddy of sorts. And the Earth is in the middle of all of them. And it's in a...
our whole solar system,
I meant to say, the solar system is in the middle. And if you look at, they have imagery, and you can see there is like a tube, a electromagnetic tube that's out kind of in the middle of nowhere, and it's out past our star. And that electromagnetic filament tube it's kind of translucent is actually a piece of the cosmic web. It is a visual representation, I guess, of the cosmic web, which exists in subspace and connects every star and every planet with an electromagnetic filament. And it's through those electromagnetic filaments that you travel in a stargate.
And yeah, it's very interesting. My wife Elizabeth and I, we started watching the Star Trek Discovery series on CBS All Access, which is their own subscriber network. It's the only way you can watch the show. And I don't know if you've seen this or not, but they use the mycelial network. They call it the mycelial network, and they say it's alive and organic, and that they have spore travel, where they actually using these sort of psychedelic cosmic spores to travel through this living web of energy. And it definitely would appear that they borrowed that from us without credit.
What's interesting is I've talked with people who have taken DMT and other types of...
I have a friend who took DMT.
Yeah. But you hear them talk about seeing this translucent matrix.
Oh, they talk about it, huh?
Yeah.
Your friends talked about...
Yeah.
I get it. I get where this is going, folks. I do get this. Okay.
That's how you see the blue avians, right? It's a trip.
So anyway, my point is that, okay, so let's just talk some Russian science real quick, which is the work of Dr. Nikolai Kozyrev. One of the really fascinating things that this Russian scientist came up with, first of all, most of the stars out there are binary stars. They're almost always binary. In fact, in the law of one, it says that every star system is binary, at least, or more than two. And there's various reasons for that I could talk about at length. But anyway, in this binary star system, Dr. Nikolai Kozyrev was observing that these two stars mirrored each other, and even things like light fluctuations, where both stars have a sudden fluctuation in their brightness output. And the timing of the brightness change was so spontaneous between the two that it could not have been traveling at light speed. It had to be traveling instantaneously, because light speed would take years to go from one star to another, but yet both the stars would flicker at the same time, indicating that there's some sort of instantaneous communication between these nearby stars. So isn't it interesting that the law of one and the Mayan calendar and this crop circle and a whole lot of other stuff pointed towards the natural end of our cycle is 2012. It appears that this cycle ending is caused to a large degree by the effect of two stars orbiting each other and their energetic fields coming and commingling.
Electromagnetic friction.
Right.
Yeah.
So then, right on time, our closest star has a solar flash at the end of the Mayan calendar. That to me is of such enormous, towering significance that it appears now that the only reason why we haven't had our own solar flash yet is this massive armada of spheres brought in by this extraterrestrial group that is literally responsible for our ascension to make sure it goes smoothly, holding it off. Which is so amazing, actually, that we've been given this extra time that. And this really is on our shoulders. We as a community, not just Corey and me, but it also is you. That we have this information and we're all doing our part to try to get people ready for this. Because honest to gosh, if there's going to be an ascension, if we're going to be activating our light bodies, and some people are going to make it, some people are not going to make it, what could possibly be more important than knowing about this, preparing yourself for this, and helping prepare others for this, right? Do you agree? There you go. So, based on your conversations with Kari and other beings that you've spoken with, they know that most people on Earth are not going to believe us. They know that most people on Earth are not going to hear this. They're not expecting us to become some sort of world-famous people who are talked about by everyone, right? But we just have to put the message out for those who are ready to receive it. So I want to drill in specifically now on the anticipated year or years that are currently being seen as most likely for when this solar flash could take place. Let's talk about that.
So that's the tricky part. When do we come out of solar minimum? Scientists do not know when we've come out of solar minimum until 6 months after, until they've had an opportunity to do the calculations. So in solar minimum can last anywhere from 9 to 11 years, for the actual cycle. So there's no way of knowing for sure. But if we just went into solar minimum, let's say this year, then it looks like 9 to 11 years from that point is when we would come out of solar minimum, and then that's when they believe that the solar sneeze, as Tompkins called it, would happen.
Right, so basically we're looking at a window most likely in the neighborhood of 2029 or 2030. So we have about 10 years to prepare ourselves for this.
And they were watching very closely as we went into solar minimum because they thought that could be another point when the micronova could occur. And they saw that we went far enough into the process of solar minimum that they're not worried about it occurring until the further time period you're talking about when we come out.
Right. Now you also, I'm working on a book right now. It's been very amazing for me. This book I'm writing is called Awakening in the Dream, and we were going to try to get it out in December, but it looks like we are going to have to push the release date forward a little bit. But hang in there, because it's going to be so worth it once this book comes out. I've gone through all the early phase of when I started to write my dreams down, when I started to have readings happening, and I've had literally the mother of all time loops. Everything that's going on right now, the people I know, the events that are taking place, where I live, what I'm doing, was all very precisely described. There's over 35 instances of this in dreams I had written down in notebooks, college notebooks from 1994, 95, and 96. It's amazing. And I've had many, many cases where my dreams seem to be completely unbound by linear time. They already knew all these things that were going to happen to me. They had already predicted that we would be working with Gaiam TV. Back in 1996, one of the very first written prophecies I had, it said, homeopathic TV. Think of Art Bell doing yoga. Right? It was a joke. In 1996, and the first show that I did on Gaia was with George Norrie, who was Art Bell's replacement. And at the time, Gaia was a yoga network. It's unbelievable. And then homeopathic TV. At the time, it was called Gaiam TV. And then it said apples and oranges can be a pair, and that seemed to be a reference to Corey and me, because in some ways we're very different people, That's certainly true, but we've come together for this mission, and I'm very grateful for that. So there's so many amazing prophecies. Yeah, thank you. How are we doing on time here? We got 5 minutes? Okay. We do have kind of a hard out here that we have to do in 5 minutes, but I wanted to make sure we got into this.
Well,
and
I have to say something real quick.
Okay.
I have never seen you so blown away as when you started pointing out these 20-year time loops, the 1977, 96, all of these things that kept popping in. I've never seen you so shocked and blown away.
Yeah, and it's also interesting. I mean, you'll notice I have a tan. Really, I never used to go out in the sun. I've been spending literally days out on my land in Colorado pulling thistle weeds out of the ground. I still have a really nasty thistle spike embedded in my thumb here. But I mean, there's something so profound about going out in nature and getting your hands in the soil and the kind of cleansing of your soul that happens. And so much of the trauma of living in third density and the pain that I felt and the uncertainty and not really feeling appreciated, not really feeling like this mission was getting what we needed to get out of it. And it says in the Law of One, we're not concerned about numbers or quick growth. If one person hears this message, that is enough. Because to reach one is to reach all. That's right. We are still working on a lot of really cool initiatives that should help us to get the message out on a much larger level. I just did this amazing taping just actually yesterday, believe it or not, for our new movie, The Cosmic Secret, and literally built the whole narrative. I mean, they were practically in tears, honest to God. It was so amazing. We had 40 minutes on each card, and over the course of about 5 cards, I basically just built the whole movie. And the movie's coming out really soon, by the way. What is the supposed release date?
It's November, I believe.
Is it November? November, okay. So you're not going to have to wait very long. It's kind of like the sequel to Above Majestic. We've got some really great production coming into that movie. So you definitely want to check out Cosmic Secret when it comes out. You will not be disappointed. It's going to get a lot more into Ascension, a lot more into the spiritual aspects of this. But I really want to focus in the last few minutes that we have here on this concept of the fact that these beings are outside of time, that they can see the future just as clearly as you and I can read the pages of a book. And one of the things that I find so exciting is the Anshar, the inner earth people that you claim to have been in contact with, that many others have reported. You know, they're called the Midwayers, or they're called the Tall Whites, or they're called the Nordics. There's different names for them. That they told us that we are going to get our freedom, that we are going to see freedom happen on Earth before the solar flash. Big round of applause for that. So just because these beings tend to be so accurate, there's no point in us being afraid of putting this prophecy on public record. Do you remember, that's the first question, do you remember what they told you about what's coming in our future even before the solar flash, what we're going to see over the next 2 or 3 years?
I don't remember exactly what you're referring to now.
I knew it, man. Come on, this is your platform, bro.
I'll remember as soon as you...
Okay, well, you'll remember when I tell you. Well, we did document this publicly before. That what we're going to see, thanks to, and to no small degree, the efforts that you and I made, despite the horror that it caused us in our personal lives and professionally and publicly and all this stuff, that because of the fight that we've all been doing together, that we are going to see disclosure, right? That so much of this material that has been suppressed is going to come out into the public eye. And that we are actually going to get our freedom. Sometime within the next 2.5 years, I believe is what they said, right? Yeah,
right.
Give it a big round of applause for that.
Right. And much of it had to do with disclosures that were coming out. And we're not talking about just ET disclosures. We're talking about disclosures about how this planet has been run behind our back. And that type of information is going to come out and awaken more people. And the more conspiracy theory becomes conspiracy fact, the more people are going to come looking at our information, the deeper information. They're going to look at the surface information, the surface conspiracy theory information at first, especially when the IG report comes out,
Oh, I know.
and a few other things. You know, that's going to be, everyone's been told on mainstream media that this is conspiracy theory. It's BS.
Right.
And
like Rachel Maddow.
Right. And when we see it in black and white, we're going to say, okay, that wasn't BS. What else is being called conspiracy theory that's not BS?
Right.
And
I
they're
mean,
gonna
what
start
kind of
digging
stuff
in.
are they pulling out of Jeffrey Epstein's house right now, for God's sake? I mean, can you imagine?
Yeah.
And they clearly seem to have had an underground base on that island. That was one of the things QAnon was posting, is these doors in the side of a cliff.
Yeah.
So folks, I mean, we are on the verge of the release of such contentious information. And there's over 500 pieces of evidence in QAnon that it was being generated by the current presidential administration. So once that happens, we go back to September 19th, 2018, when they actually said that secret space programs do exist outside the public domain. They have given us a tool, folks, where we can demand, once this is known to have come from the administration and what they've been doing, that they're going to expose all these satanic pedophile rings, we can demand the truth. Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, guys. They were like, go up there. Sorry. But wasn't that incredible, you guys?
Oh, yeah.
Woo!
Thank you so much, everybody.
I know. I was like, I'm sure this could go on forever, but it's not our fault. They're like, you got to get up there. So.
We do have a hard out tonight.
Yeah, don't shoot the messengers, guys. But hey, so we gave Corey a shirt yesterday. But we have a shirt for David today.
All right.
After this talk, so we just wanted
I
to
assume it's a Fallon Gong shirt, right?
Will this one infringe on his trademarks?
You're going to like this,
French on
David.
trademarks.
Okay, so David's always talking about the cabal, right, guys? Well, we got him a shirt.
Kick 'em in the cabals. All right. All right.
Hope you like it, David.
I love it, man.
Hey, so let's give these guys a round of applause,
Yes,
everyone.
this is amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Just, incredible.
This is awesome.
It's just so amazing.
So actually, the live chat's been really interesting back there. I've been on with them, and after I told them I was giving you a shirt, the next thing they said is they wanted me to design a pair of socks called David Wilsocks. those are going to be on the Edge of Wonder site really soon, I promise.
Do I get a cut or what, bro?
Oh, you're definitely getting a cut of those.
Come on, you're using my IP, man.
Yeah, right. All right, just kidding, you guys, but thank you guys very much. Now listen, all you guys that are here, the crew needs to completely clear the room, so don't leave anything in here. We don't want to get anything to get thrown out, and we love you guys, so thank you very much.
Yeah, and we're going to be around tomorrow, see my wife's talk, and I'm going to be here. We'll do some meet and greet right now. We do need to get out of here quick because I still haven't had dinner. And it only goes till 11 at the other hotel I'm staying at. So
wow, okay.
Yeah.
And I guess we'll see maybe 10 people here tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock for our presentation.
Oh, that's right. You guys, I forgot to tell you. They were nice enough to give us the best time slot for our presentation, 8 a.m. on Sunday morning. Man. Because the conference organizers knew that you guys weren't going to be partying tonight. Thank you, conference organizers. So we'll see 5 people here tomorrow at 8 a.m. Thank you.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Good night.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Good night.
A lot more to come.
Your search for truth and deeper meaning has led you here.
Everyone in the UFO community is faced with how do you navigate a course through material that encompasses ancient civilizations, extraterrestrials, secret societies, and what is the relationship between those and the governance of our modern world?
There is more to this reality than you are being told.
A good starting point is to rethink everything that we thought we knew about history.
We don't even know our own potential as human beings.
I'm a researcher.
I was an FBI special agent.
I'm a secret space program whistleblower. Because of my unprecedented access in the programs, I was able to learn about an ancient race they refer to as the Goode race.
They are the most evolved extraterrestrial group that has ever been involved with humanity.
They take a genetic approach to help them manage this great experiment, humanity. They also bring us various belief systems.
Isn't it interesting? All of the religious traditions of Earth has end with a catastrophic event. We have this evidence hidden out in the open, but we don't ask the deeper questions.
The CIA declassified a document that describes a cataclysmic series of events.
The main message from these ETs are for us to prepare ourselves for this coming event.
This so-called apocalypse is actually not gloom and doom. It's a rebirth. There will be a whole new beginning.
Whoa, look at that, look at that!
Insiders are telling me this will lead to some evolutionary leap in what it means to be human.
Thank you for watching the Sphere Being Alliance channel. Make sure you click on subscribe and smash the bell to make sure you're receiving all the new content from the Sphere Being Alliance YouTube channel.